gives me performance.
Cammy, why would you say that gay people are sinners and going to hell?
And
Oh my
shouldn't have
god.
rights.
Why did you say that?
Unbelievable.
Okay, let me intro
You
for
guys
anyone
can't be
listening. I
trolling
thought that
Cammy.
the last discussion went decent, even though we yelled. I won't yell.
Well, me and you were going to yell a little bit, but we'll focus it at each other.
I might. I'm tired, but I don't want to do what we did last time. Let's have a productive discussion. Okay,
Yes, I'd
so
like to.
tonight, team, our benevolent, loving team, is going to be discussing general politics. We hopped into voice chat when we started getting to the question of what is politics, what is class, what is society, what is socialization, and we ended up jumping into here with the question, what is politics? So maybe we should start with this. What is politics? Anybody?
These nuts.
Can we get a dictionary
Darwin!
definition to lead it with?
All right, I got a Wikipedia definition.
Okay.
Okay.
Is the set of activities that are associated with the governance of a country, state, or area. It involves making decisions that apply to groups of members and achieving and exercising positions of governance. Organized control over a human community.
Can we minimize it to activities associated with governance of a country or other area?
Let's see what Miriam says, because Miriam has short definitions. Let's see if we agree with what she says. It's probably similar to Wikipedia's. Miriam says, and then we can type it. Let's define our terms, because last time much of what we disagreed with was semantics, and then by the time we got around to defining our terms, realized that we were arguing for separate things. So let's pick a definition together and we can stick with it. Okay.
Right.
Miriam says, definition 1A, the art or science of government. The art or science concerned with guiding or influencing governmental policy. Okay, so these all just kind of reference government. Let's see what government is.
Government is like
the control of a populace, right?
Organization of a society.
Well,
yeah, this one's kind of good. Tell me if you guys like this one. 2A, government. The organization, machinery, or agency through which a political unit exercises authority and performs functions, and which is usually classified according to the distribution of power within it.
Here's where I have an issue.
Take off the second half.
It references directly politics in its definition.
Well, politics and government are kind of cross-referential, aren't they?
Well, I don't like that government talks about class disparity or power disparity, because that isn't necessarily
I didn't like that part either. What if we cut that part out? Here, I'll type it. This is type the part out. Cut that part out. Tell me if you guys agree with this. I think
politics is probably just like the influence of the organization of society.
Yes, I back that definition.
To put it as simply as possible, without having to say the words government.
This one references like it could be both the body that like actually embodies government, and also like the laws, the organization, machinery, or agency through which a political unit exercises authority and performs functions. Do you guys like that?
Yeah, okay. Sure.
Yes.
What's that hesitancy, Decoy?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I just feel like politics changes. That could mean a lot of different things.
I think that you should.
Well, it is very vague.
Politics and political.
Wait, hold on.
But that's
talk
good.
Over each other.
Yeah. What do you say, Darwin?
I said I think you should differentiate between politics as like an action or whatever, and political systems, which are like the what is the word? They're like the modus operandi for those actions.
You mean like doing politics and like the political like establishment?
Yeah.
And like doing politics and like doing political things.
But do we think maybe starting with the most vague definition is probably the best? Because if we get too hyper specific, if we get too hyper specific, then we're gonna start arguing about if that's appropriate. I
Right.
feel
Yeah,
like the
I think
dictionary definition is pretty vague, and that's good.
I think when it comes to things like things as broad as politics, I think we all have a kind of idea in our heads of what politics is, and like I think we could just kind of go with that. Really,
Well, the
Perhaps we will
vagueness is
come to a
necessary,
better
I think, for the
understanding.
beginning, because the
I think it's
point
still
here
good
is
to
to
go
arrive
over
at a conclusion together that is a better definition, as we agree on it from
I think it's
wherever
good to
the
go
debate
over the
goes.
definitions. I just don't think it's good to go right. This is the definition that we're all going to use.
Right. Yeah,
Then,
this is a good one to start
Only-
with, and
only in
perhaps
this-
we
only for
can improve
for
it
something like
as
this,
we
but-
continue.
If we were talking about something more specific, then maybe. But this is pretty broad. Politics is pretty big.
It's a
Should
good
we clarify
starting
the
point.
difference between ideology and politics? I feel like the distinction is important.
Well, in the
well, I feel-
definition
I
we
feel-
have now,
It's
the
a
definition.
subsection of politics, I'd say.
Well, in the
Depends how-
definition we have now, Ramona, it seems like political ideologies exist under this definition too. It's included.
You sound far away.
Oh, can
Yeah.
you hear me now?
Yeah.
I feel like
It
having
sounds like in the
ideology
definition
it feels like cheating. They can't do that.
Why? Because don't you use politics? I mean, think about how we use this word in everyday language. Like, if we're talking about political ideology and having a discussion, I feel like we would call that politics.
There was a really, I just want to, there was a really smug advert in the United Kingdom for when the election was going to happen, where someone was talking to a guy about, oh, have you read this in the paper? And the other guy goes, oh, I don't do politics. And then he would like go about his day and stuff and be like, oh, that's politics. And like, oh, turn out that
Yeah.
politics. He'd like
Or even the
peel a
discussion
banana
we
and
were-
they'd go, oh, that's politics. and like to kind of be like, politics affects every part of life. You should vote. So like, because you could you could find a political dimension to everything, because politics kind of affects everything.
Well, even the discussion we were just having before we came in here, we were just talking about like 10 different things, and someone was like, this is just politics, and it's like, yeah, that encompasses ideology, it encompasses speech about how the government functions. Like, I
Well,
think
what-
it's good to have a vague definition of politics, because the definition likely is vague, it encompasses many things.
And like I said, it switches. It can change the specific meanings depending on what's going on, what we're talking about, and what are we going to talk about? What should we talk about?
Well,
Could I present
Yes.
what I think the disagreement we're having is?
are we having a
We were
disagreement?
talking.
I was
yeah,
about
we
to
were
get
talking
into it.
about,
You can
well,
tell
like,
them.
the reason that we're talking.
Yeah, how do you frame the disagreement? I was about to get into that.
Well, let me
You
hear how
should
you
tell
frame
them.
it.
No, you
Well-
frame it.
Yeah, you
Okay.
frame it.
Someone frame it.
So we were talking about class.
Oh yeah, I
And
forgot.
Buttress said that class. Somebody said that class was political, and then Buttress said that politics creates class, and I disagree. I don't think that class is political. We went on, and I said that class exists because society exists, not because politics exists. And then you said, what was society without politics? And that was what we came to discuss, like that series of questions about whether or not class was strictly political.
Okay, well, first off the
Yeah,
top of my head,
I mean, I don't think that's really what we were arguing, but I'll say what I meant there.
Okay.
Because we were arguing something before that. What I
Which
meant by
was?
that is, well, what we were arguing before that, and what I think we should discuss is what class really is, period. Because that was the thing I really wanted to argue before
Yeah.
we got into that, which
Yeah.
is, the fact, because, I'm a big fan of philosophy of language, and I feel like when we talk about class analysis, what we mean by that is, sort of this Marxist interpretation of everything being about the economic class and the working class versus the ruling classes and stuff. And I just don't like this language and framing because we've already seen people start to default to this as like, the most important thing is class. But I feel like there's so many more classes that are just as, if not more important than our economic class.
This is what I was interested in because I heard you talking about gender and things like as like a type of class, which
Right.
isn't wrong. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just like I never thought of in the way of language. I never really thought of like that as in the same kind of thing as class. Like it's a way that people are distinct. But it's
Right,
not
and
the
I think this
same
is
as-
part of the
I don't
problem.
think it's the same as class. When I
Right.
talk about class,
Right, and I think that that's a problem because I don't think
because I think that even though they intersect with all kinds of things like ethnic minorities being more having more chance of being working class than ethnic majorities. I've never said that before, but like
White people.
Yeah, mostly white people.
Well,
like,
this can I tell?
Now that I know you're cool.
but like it's a social stratification isn't total is like based on economics more than the.
Well, I
can
think
I
that
ask you
economics
this?
always takes precedence in these discussions, and I kind of have a problem with that because I'm not saying that it shouldn't, but I think that, each class that exists, these things like gender, race, some of them have more permanence when we look at the history of society, period, and all political civilizations. Yeah. And some of them are more transmutable,
A lot
and
of them,
so
I would argue,
especially economic dependence. Well. Yeah, exactly. Like, I think that the economic divisions that exist and these sort of class divisions are like a pretty new phenomena, Capitalism has only really existed the way we can observe it for, the past
always been class. There's always been class, though, in a broader sense. Since civilization, literally since agriculture, basically, more or less. Or since the source of food, and then there was specialization, and then suddenly there were the classes of, laborers and classes of writers or scribes. I mean, or like and then kings, and that's it.
Starting to sound like Dungeons and Dragons in here.
Yeah, wizards.
I'm a scribe.
It was a big class.
The bard class.
So
bard class.
Monkey goblin rights.
Yeah.
So, what was your stance that class is the ultimate unifying thing amidst things like gender and social classes, that economic class takes precedence?
I think you're asking me.
Yeah.
Can we call it sex? Because I don't know what gender.
Yeah, we can call it sex.
Means.
Okay, sure, yeah. Well, I mean, gender's whatever. I'm not going down there. Yeah, I think that. Although I'm not saying, I mean, I could be wrong. But I think that especially like with as globalization becomes more apparent, I think that class is a bigger problem with how society functions. I'm not sure how to solve, but causes the biggest divide in like just general quality of life and possibilities and opportunities and pursuit of happiness and all those things that we think are.
But I think what you're saying is ultimately that, like, this might be the most encompassing class, but is it really the most important one if we're doing like class analysis? Because if you look at things like race class, sex class, these things transcend economics. Like, so even in the higher classes, if you're a woman, you'll still be treated differently and take on a whole different separate role. And I wouldn't consider you to be in the same class as your male peers in the upper class. Same for racial minorities in America.
Saying that it was the most important. I think me saying it was the most important was kind of not the right way to put it, because it's not that it's the most important in the sense that that I care about it the most necessarily. I mean, I do, but like
It is.
Well,
I think it's the most important in our language.
I think it's the most. I think it's just the one that you can like.
The most
It's one of those things that like
identity.
you could be like a black woman of like a higher social standing.
Right.
And
Can I clarify? Can I expand on that for a second? I think I know what you're trying to say, and I think I have a way of putting it.
Please.
Economic class is the only thing that negates the oppression as a result of different identities. So if you are, if you're not white, if you're a woman, if you're gay, if you're trans, it negates that, because if you're any of those things and you're rich, then you're not going to deal with nearly as much oppression as someone who's one of those things or several of those things and also poor.
I wouldn't say it negates it completely, but it is.
I'm not saying.
But why I think it's important is because it does.
Can I say something?
Yeah. I'm just gonna finish, but like even with all these like sort of more. I hate to say identity, but like, sort of like race and religion and gender and stuff, they still like the wealth difference is still is probably going to make the biggest difference in how your life is, like in how good of a life you have. Even with those other things involved. Yes, I know. Yes.
I think that what Ramona said, I agree with you, Ramona. But I think too that we have to think about things like permanence, especially if we're trying to do like historical analysis, because I think what you just said is true in certain societies in our modern era. But it's not really like a useful historical tool, because if we look at things like class distribution, economic class distribution in the pretty near past, being a woman of the higher classes a century ago or a little bit more, you're basically just like a glorified object, like you still can't have access to education. You're pretty much sold into that position and you're pretty much just
your
a possession.
It's true.
Your property, so like now if you're a woman and you come into a certain economic class, I think that it does partially negate the fact you're a woman, and it does become an advantage. You still are going to ultimately be a woman, so I would say that sex would transcend your economic class, but I think it does help greatly, but in the not so distant past, it wouldn't matter. Even if you're a rich woman, you really can't be a rich woman, period. You can just belong to a rich man,
It's kind of hard to say, because if like say 100 years ago, being a rich woman would still be better. You still have servants, and it would still be better than being a woman.
It depends so much on context.
Yeah, but like there's very few situations. I can't think of many situations where being like a poor. You have two women who both have all the social bullshit of, either being property or legally property, or not being able to own property, or all these things that women have. But like the poor woman like has a better life, or a similar.
But you're from the UK, are you? You're from the UK, where the wives of the king were just like getting beheaded like left and right. Like,
that is not the same. That's not.
Can I interject though?
What's not the same as what?
That was like, yeah. But
being the wife of the king, how much better could it get? And if being the wife of the king is not
being
enough.
The wife of the king, being the wife of the king, if he liked you and didn't go on you as Henry.
Well, I wouldn't say that's an advantage, and that's probably the example of the highest class of woman you could be.
Yeah, but that was also at a time where being a woman in just like the countryside was not really much. I suppose.
But do you think one's much better? I would rather be a woman in the countryside.
Oh, I'd rather have
material conditions as the.
I'd rather have
I don't think one is much better.
At least Anne Boleyn got her head cut off. I'd rather have Anne Boleyn's life than the life of any peasant in those days.
But that's only
I think-
considering material conditions, man. That's saying that the material conditions are the ultimate deciding factor of quality of life, which I don't think is true. Just because you have access to material conditions doesn't mean that your life was better.
That's a fair thing to say.
And besides that, my real disagreement here is that.
But I think we can agree it does kind of help, right? Like, as in,
I don't know.
I disagree that it helps. It only helps your material conditions. Her actual existence is probably much worse than a woman working, on a farm in an environment where she isn't treated like property. If you only consider material conditions, then yes, it's an easy answer to say that the wife of a king has a better life.
It does depend on how you look at it. But when we talk about economic class and economic identity versus social classes, the issue I have here is that most women don't even have access to change economic class. Women, 100 years ago were either born into money and then were married off as a way to merge industries, or were treated as straight up property and trophy wives. So it's not like a woman in an economic class above now has a better existence. Even the idea of moving.
It's kind of like being a dog.
Advance on her own. She's just a pet to some other economic class. But her social class transcends that. She will always be on the lower tier of the wealthy because she's a woman. No matter how far she advances her economic class, she cannot escape the natural social condition and social class that she experiences. To say that economic class is the highest determinant of this condition is, I think, in my understanding, what class reductionism goes off of, is to say that class ultimately determines and that social class is less of a determinant in your material conditions. But I disagree with that.
Yeah,
I think that there's a manifold system within each economic class of social classes, and then a hierarchy within that decides your quality of life further. And we see this expressed in both classes, where we see people from many different social classes being members of both the working class when we talk about economic class and the property ownership class. But they experience the same overall disparity in material conditions within their class. I think it's equitable on both sides of that economic class. Their social positions are similar.
Yeah, I think it's just because I'm thinking of just in the modern mindset of having less money is generally bad because of the possibility.
I don't think anybody disagrees with
your money
disappearing,
you losing your house and stuff.
I just think that people just don't think it's like the most important determinant.
Wait, Darwin, start over. We didn't hear the first part of that.
Oh, I heard the first part, but do it anyway.
I was saying I don't think any of us disagree with his assertion that having less money is bad and having more money is good. I just don't think any of us agree that that's like the most important determinant of anything.
What do you think, Darwin?
Do you think
Wait, I want to hear what Darwin thinks.
Do you think there is one most important determinant, or do you think it's too complicated to say there's one single one?
No, I don't. I don't think there's just one thing that absolutely can just guarantee that you have a good quality of life. Because I mean, okay,
I never really,
because nobody
guarantees it
or used it as an example. But let's say that I was a millionaire, right? But it's 1946 or 1950 or something. I'm a millionaire from Africa, and I travel to Alabama, right? That's not how does being a millionaire help me in the Jim Crow era of whatever the fuck is going on.
That'd be interesting to see.
Well, he'd probably be targeted. They'd probably take you out like they did in Oklahoma when they bombed the fucking Black Wall Street.
Yeah, so I see what you're saying in that.
You can't transcend your social class through any economic class, any variance of economic class. You can't escape your social class. It's always a determinant.
It's always interesting when I see it in things of how people from ethnic minority backgrounds or women do move their way up social classes. But
well, this is why I think that a theory of permanence would be really helpful in a thing like class analysis, because look at a thing like racism. You know, racism is also like a relatively recent development in the history of the world. I mean, people always could notice that, you know, this ethnic group looks different than me, but white
Yeah.
supremacy is really a thing that's only existed since like the 15th century, you know. And so it's like this is not a thing that I think would necessarily be like permanent in any theory of class analysis, but neither would economics, you know. I
Right.
feel like all of these things have different kinds of permanence, and like I'm especially invested in this conversation as it relates to women because I think that this is the oldest class division period and one that will never escape. So this is why I like get uppity often in these discussions because I feel like, and I recommended that text to you, Bryce, because Simone de Beauvoir talks about this a bit,
Right.
about how women can't really organize even in, you know, things like Marxism. Like there's not really enough room. And there's never been, women have never developed a class consciousness, period, because
No.
our distribution is so, it's too, we're too evenly distributed, you know, and we live
Yeah.
with the same people that oppress us, even though it might not be like direct, you know, like
Can I
my
ask you a
dad
question?
literally oppresses me. Yeah.
When we talk about women not having, did you say class consciousness or class solidarity?
Class consciousness or solidarity.
Well, would you say that the suffrage movement was at least an example of some form of class consciousness in women in America specifically?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But we haven't seen anything like that, at least in recent years, that I can remember, any kind of unified front for women.
Well, I think that the second wave of feminism was, you know, there was a lot of things that were good about it, and we were heading in a
Right.
good direction. But, you know, that was like 50 years ago. But I think that if we continued in that way, and we're seeing a lot of women try to come back to that kind of analysis that we were doing during the second wave, instead of this fucking body positivity pro sex work bullshit thing that we're in right now,
Right.
which people call the third wave of feminism, but I don't because I don't think that it's feminism at all.
Right.
But yeah, I think that women need to develop class consciousness and class solidarity, and we need to discuss ourselves as a class, you know, instead of just this footnote to all other kind of class analysis. Like it's not gonna ever change until we're able to organize on the basis of our sex, you know.
Right.
Mm.
I think it's an important distinction to say that certain classes, you know, when we talk specifically about gender is a divide, like you said, that has existed since the birth of class. Probably the first class ever was biological sex, you know, and the power disparity there being mostly a physical power disparity. And I think we talked a little bit in one other discussion, maybe that Tyler was there for, about how that original power disparity has manifested in really how we approach biological sex, gender, and much of class identity and class analysis today. Because it's almost a subconscious consideration at this point in a lot of people's minds. You know, I find myself doing it when I talk about, when I get on my rants about revolutionary shit in the text chat, and I consider economic class sometimes to be the most prevalent part of any revolution, that should be the spearhead of total social upheaval, is at a baseline, like fucking eat the rich, kill your fucking landlord, you know, all of this shit, which I believe. But in recent weeks, as this topic has come up a lot, I think now that we have to have the discussion about what really should be spearheading total social upheaval and change, and the transitioning of the social mindset for a revolution.
I think that like that kind of like class overthrow revolution happens the most and is talked about the most because it is about economics, and it usually happens at the point where people are in such poverty that they can't eat, or they can't have access to, you know, houses or health, and they can't stay alive. So then they're pushed. That's usually, so that's kind of gives them the push into revolution more than like other sort of barriers between people does. because
Well, I think that changes though based on your social class, because I think if you were to ask women, hold on, the weed's affecting my train of thought.
that's fine. I'm very drunk and it's quite late.
God damn it.
Well,
was a
I'll
good one, too.
answer. I'll respond. I
Go
think
ahead.
maybe you were gonna go here. I think yeah. This is my problem with why we need to like stop ignoring sex, because really economic. Even though it's true that if you have access to more wealth as a woman in our time, that you will be able to get ahead in some ways. Ultimately, until the actual disparity, which is the one that underlies the division in the first place, which is our sex, if we don't talk about that, I mean, women can never be lifted up out of economic depression or out of any sort of oppression period, if we don't give consideration to the actual power disparity that underlies this reality. I think people kind of talk about it in a certain way. They say like, oh, well, now the power disparity doesn't matter because we have technology, we have, all of these different tools at our disposal where women can now have birth control and this and that. And so, if we just give them better access to these resources, like everything will be fine or whatever.
Yeah,
And I think that we've jumped the gun.
That kind of argument is people, being like, I think this is sorted now because we can just,
Yeah, well, I think we've jumped the gun in many ways, and we talk about now we're trying to act like, oh, we have to minimize the differences in sex in order to bring women up and like act as if, women and men are like completely the same or whatever, but we're just not, and this is never gonna like change. So and it's kind of like offensive because I feel like these people are well intentioned to be like, okay, if we just ignore the differences, then we can like get women and men to an equal playing ground. Why would you? To me, it's like, when white people are always saying, well, I'm colorblind, I don't see race. It's like, well, why can't you see race? We have to ignore black skin. It becomes almost as if it's a bad thing. Like, I don't want you to ignore black skin. I don't want you to ignore my female physiology. Like, why do I have to ignore it now? We've never even gotten to celebrate it or see what's good about the female body.
Like just a strange basicist sort of like first idea way of equality of like, right, well, this group, like the men are the ones on on top, so to speak. So we'll just have the women acting like the men, and then there we go. They'll do all the things that men can do, and it's all men focused still. You know what I mean? It's still kind of like,
right. Yeah, I mean, we've already the problem is we've ignored females' particular needs for all of civilization. So ignoring it now further in a way where it's supposed to be nice and progressive is not the solution. You've just reframed it to sound nicer. But I don't want our bodies to be ignored. The problem is that we frame it in such a way where we talk about women as being disadvantaged because of our physiology, and we are disadvantaged because we live in a patriarchal society. But that's why we need to stop making the default person in society men and men's bodies. Like, all rights that exist in politics exist for men, and women get left behind. I think we need separate rights. The right to abortion should be a specific thing that exists only for women, but it's not in so many places, like America especially. Women only have the right to abortion because of a right that men have, and then we just get swooped under that right, the right to medical privacy. And because men also have this right, we get this one, but women need their own specific rights to abortion. Society needs to start being structured in ways that account for our physiology.
But that's the death. The death of that is the spread of the inclusivity narrative. That the idea here is to just ignore any variation, to pretend that it doesn't exist, and to level the playing field and then say you have to exist in this world set as like a man's world, the standard of man, regardless of whatever your true material disadvantage is. against the measurement system that
Right,
we
we need
use
to make
in a
it
man's
not a
world.
disadvantage. That's the problem. The problem
That's
is
the
it is
issue.
a disadvantage, and it shouldn't be. It should.
Right, and you can't ignore
Society
it.
is only structured in such a way that now women are disadvantaged because of our physiology, but our separate physiology isn't necessarily disadvantaged at baseline. Only in a
Right.
question of like who is stronger, who has to shoulder the burden of the reproductive care. Like yes,
I think it's
but
a
women
cultural
also
thing as well.
have benefits. There's also benefits to having a female body too. You know, you would just never realize it with the way everything's structured. But coronavirus is exposing some of those. I mean, the fact that men are dying at much higher rates, and women in general have much stronger immune systems. We live longer, you know, like we have benefits too. Not everything is just like, oh, male physiology is superior. This is kind of what's implied when we say, let's ignore the female body, you know, because let's make the women feel good. We don't want to talk about their little, like,
plus men die earlier
handicapped bodies.
anyway. But everyone's just like, you know, that's because we do so much, or some ridiculous reason.
Thanks,
Yeah, no,
Corona.
women have actual stronger immunity.
It's like, what was I gonna say?
But when you say disadvantage, we imply, in saying that you're disadvantaged, we apply a purpose that you're disadvantaged at achieving. So when people say things like women are disadvantaged, like, oh, a woman's body is a disadvantage, you're assuming that her goal is to live up to the standard that we have set for men. And that until a woman can live up to the set of standard that we have for men, she's considered disadvantaged by default. Because we have these patriarchal ideas of what it is to be effective in society, and they're based on manhood because we have defined society as men since the formation of it. We have to now consider that women are not disadvantaged in a man's world, but need a separate system of rights tailored specifically to the things that they are advantaged for and their true material conditions as women, and not man's material conditions like forced over them and then say, hey, either figure it out or you're fucked.
What I think kind of needs to happen, which like I don't know how many people agree with it, and it might be some sort of, and look, I don't know if it's seen as like Twitter like navel gazing bullshit, but like it's really through like, hopefully through like sort of probably quite slow sort of cultural understandings of like how this has happened and how like and realizing that all the things that we take for default in like patriarchal societies don't necessarily have to be that way, and that it's not just complete physical difference that like it makes a difference between a woman's success in something compared to a man's success in something, like on a base level, but sort of just how people's mindsets are towards what women should be and what men should be in a cultural way.
Well, I think that's become a problem. Like, you're discussing gender right now, you know, and gender, in my opinion, is the justification for the power disparity that emerges out of our natural conditions, you know. When we started, it's women, the thing that mostly disadvantaged women is we're literally weaker, and we shoulder the burden of the reproductive process, you know, and then out of this we created a society is built already in this patriarchal mode, and then we have to come up with justifications which are gender, you know, to further enforce the difference between men and women. And we come up with things like, oh well, women are also biologically bad at math, you know, and they're bad at science, and this is what I was talking with Ramona a bit the other day. You know, that's what that's what gender essentialism is, this idea that like all of these things, you know, are what we're biologically not competitive. We just biologically love staying home and nurturing. That's
exactly what I'm talking about, though. Exactly, that's what we're kind of coming around to the idea to quite recently, as far as history goes. In the sense
this is my problem too. My problem is that women have already spelled this out for us since forever. I mean, if you read Simone de Beauvoir,
I know, but like,
and the second wave of feminism was all about discussing this, and now we are backsliding enormously.
I was just meaning that when you were saying, these ideas of gender essentialism, where it was like, well, women are more childlike, women just aren't as intelligent, women just aren't as competitive. The ideas that women in themselves were, it wasn't. That's the reason that things were the way they were. Well, if I don't know, what the practical answer is, but the way to sort of continue this sort of understanding with people of how we view, because that's based on how people viewed women and how people viewed men at that time. So it was different then, and it's different now, and it'll be different. It could be different in the future, and it would help towards equalizing things a bit, or helping lessen the barriers between us in that way. In ways that don't have to be just legal, or that kind of needs to happen as well. Is kind of what I'm saying. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, but I think it's such a nuanced thing, because people also use this kind of justification for why we also don't have to discuss, our physical material realities. They'll be like, oh, if we just have more women as action heroes, then, slowly people will accept, more women scientists in movies.
This is why I was worried about, because this does fall into kind of Tumblr and Twitter sort of ideas of culture transformation, and sort of just using culture as a way to, or pop culture is what I mean, just using representation and superficial, ultimately superficial things like that to try to show that they're
I wouldn't say that shit is ultimately superficial at all.
I mean,
Darwin. Let Darwin talk. Darwin hasn't spoken really. Go ahead, Darwin.
I heard him, but yeah. Okay.
No, I mean, I wasn't even really needing to elaborate. I'm just saying I don't think that the cultural sort of pushes are superficial at all. I actually think it's really important.
I think some of them. I think some of them have grown a little superficial. I think that the general idea is still reasonably good, in the sense that considering say American TV in the 50s compared to American TV now, and how it.
But then look at American TV in the 70s. Look at American TV in the 70s versus American TV now. We had much better representation of women, I would say, in a lot of things in the 70s. These things change so quickly and so dramatically that I don't personally think it's much of a useful tool, especially when you look at racial representation. Something I like to think about a lot is about. Can I finish?
Yeah, sorry.
I like to think about how in the 80s, all the black actors were and 70s, they were they had very dark complexions, and now it's all light-skinned people. It's you have to be a mixed race black person, and we talk about this as being oh, this is something that's always been true, but it hasn't. It's interesting to see when and why we backslid on things like this, cultural representation is a thing that changes so fast. I think we lose track of the narrative too, because no one ever talks about this. Why were all black actors previously of darker complexions, and now it's only mixed race people, and the lighter you are, the more you'll get cast and shit.
That is weird, and I have noticed that, and also, it's not necessarily that it's all moving perfectly in this good way people like to think of history, where it's
I'm not sure it's moving towards anything, which is why I just avoid it.
It's moving. It's not moving toward, whether it's moving towards something is but it's changing. It's always changing.
Right, but that's why I think it's neither here nor there ultimately. I agree that it's important.
I still think it has its importance,
for sure.
I think it does too.
Like the
It
reason
does,
that I think
especially
that
for
that shit is
kids.
important is I think you might just be like underestimating like how much people are like.
How much people what?
You cut out, Darwin.
Oh, my bad, my bad. I'm on the push to talk, so if my finger slid off of it. But what I was saying is,
Oh, okay.
I do think it's really important because just of the fact that like I understand how much people are kind of just like influenced so strongly by like the imagery that they see and like what they see in the media. Like not even specifically like representation, but like just like, you know, like advertisements and shit like that. Like those people may think that the cultural that the advertising reflects the culture, but it's like propaganda is like literally like one of the most powerful ways to like affect people's minds and shit. Like if you're just like a kid or something and you're watching TV, or you're just like an average person in America or whatever that has like a sixth grade education and shit like that. These are the people who voted for Trump. Like these people who are like they sit there in their fucking trailers watching television and they believe what they see and they like internalize those attitudes and shit like that. It's not like it's not like there's like it's not like the attitudes just exist in and of themselves. Like they like what they see on TV like really matters. Like what you see on TV like really matters. Like when people see like the homosexual representation and shit on TV, like that shit like it really matters. Like
I
it's
I
not
think
superficial
yeah.
to
I
me.
think the biggest way that it does affect how how it moves from pop culture into how people actually think, like on a day to day, is how it like is how mass media like sort of sets the bar for what is normal, like and or default or what's expected. So like you watch um so like before like being gay on TV was all right or whatever, or interracial kisses were all right and stuff like that on TV. The fact that you knew that that couldn't be a thing, I suppose like it kind of works together with like changing attitudes as well outside of TV. But like once these sorts of things get more normalized into just pop culture, so like suddenly interracial kisses aren't on like a shock anymore. It I think it has some effect on people sort of being able to think this does it doesn't have this doesn't have to be how things are because of norm just like
I'm just saying, I'm not saying it's not a two-way feedback mechanism. I'm just
yeah
saying the fact that like I'm just saying it's really powerful in how it shapes
Yeah,
the
no, I agree
idea
with
of
you.
what is normal.
I think you're I think did you say like about like kids show uh
I said that I think it's really important for children, especially, and
yeah
Darwin brought this
because
up. What I was skeptical of was just, or what I am skeptical of, I guess, is just this endless campaigning that you kind of alluded to on like social media, where people are like, "Oh, more female scientists in fictional movies," and it's like, yeah, I think that that's important too, and in fictional media. But I think, ultimately, what's really important, and I agree with both of you, is that there's representation in like actual representation. I know growing up as like a woman in my schooling curriculum, it was really depressing every time we learned about scientists or great historical figures. Everyone is a man and everyone's a white man. I never was
yeah
exposed to I never was exposed to the contributions of Black people or even really to their history in America. I mean, I feel like we just brushed over slavery. Like, oh yeah, that was really unfortunate anyway. And we watched some like slavery movies, which white people fucking love. You know, like it's just
Yeah.
But fictional representation too, I think, has its place and is important. And at every level,
It's the
I
same
mean,
with the
this
British
shit is so
Empire.
complex. I think that we enact what we see in media, and also, you know, it's a two-way street, like Darwin said. Like
Yeah.
it's kind of a feedback loop. So it is
Yeah,
important.
it's definitely a feedback loop. And what was I going to say?
Pornography is so influential.
Hmm.
That needs to go.
Yeah.
Isn't it kind of as simple as like, I mean, I know it's almost reductive to say it, but like they told you when you were a kid that you are what you eat. It's the same thing in any media you consume, period, whether it be, you know, mass media and the advertisements or mass like particularly influential pieces where they're trying to cause a social change through the presentation. I mean, if you read a whole bunch of books about a subject that lean in a certain direction, the odds are you're going to lean in that direction.
What I thought
no
was
matter what media you're consuming, you're going to replicate it in your life in some manner. I mean, consuming philosophy for me in the early parts of it changed the way that I interface with my reality because the media I was consuming changed how I looked at things. Now, if the only media you consume is mass media, like advertisements and TV shows and fucking shit that's all inclusive, of course it's going to influence your worldview. It is your worldview. The material manifestation of how you're interacting with these ideas is directly through the media presentation.
Yeah.
It couldn't not be influential if it fucking tried.
Yeah,
It's
I mean that's what
influential by nature.
I mean that's what straight up propaganda does. And tries,
whether it's propaganda or not,
like,
media is influential. Its
yeah,
intent
but propaganda
is not even the question.
is just media, but completely without nuance. like just being like, this is how things are. I was gonna.
Well, there's a lot of nuance in propaganda too. I mean, I feel
Propaganda
like a lot
can
of
definitely be nuanced.
like to talk about pornography.
Like Trump saying that it's a Chinese virus. That's like pure propaganda. If you
That's a different. I mean, obviously the propaganda I think is the classic propaganda when it first started. Becoming a thing.
That doesn't exist in the age of technology, though. We have to talk about our conditions now and how propaganda now is absolutely nuanced and subversive. It is everywhere you find.
It's literally engineered to fool you.
It's engineered to make you think that those thoughts that you're having, these realizations you're coming to, are of course the right thing because everybody fucking around you says they're the right thing, but there's no critical fucking thought to the process.
I don't disagree with you. I think the thing about thing I'm interested in is like children's TV, like and child representation in children's things, and when I read about Sesame Street bringing things in to try to bring in these characters where like their dad's gone to prison or they have autism or things like that to try to.
It's fucking terrible.
Yeah, just to sort of like try to.
Elmo's daddy is
Yeah.
What crime can you commit in Sesame
He's an ad
Street?
seg.
But it's like
Isn't Sesame Street utopian?
But it's like it's the idea is to sort of because kids are just kids don't have any fucking bigotry or understandings of history and society and things, so just like fitting in like things to be like this is just how things are and this is like I don't know. I don't know. I don't really know what point I'm making. I just find it interesting when it's in kids shows because it's a bit. It is more propaganda, because obviously there has to be less nuance because it's for kids, and it's sort of propaganda, but in an educational way. So it's like all right, but it's like in a way that's like to normalize things because that's the real thing that because that's what propaganda is trying to do. It's not trying to make you think that what you're thinking is crazy. It's trying to make you think that what you're thinking is how things are, avoiding without you realizing.
Well, it's interesting thinking about what you just said, because it's like, okay, on the one hand, there's propaganda. Propaganda exists to fulfill a specific purpose, and so does things like putting in messaging in children's shows, where you normalize like kids' exposures to same-sex relationships and stuff like this.
Yeah.
Propaganda, maybe we should come up with a definition, because it's interesting thinking about that. It's like, well, is this propaganda on Sesame Street? Like, a lot of people say that it is, of course. It's the gay agenda and shit.
Well, propaganda
but maybe
has a inherently negative meaning because it was used.
Well, maybe
because
to talk
mostly it
about
was used for
normalization.
terrible thing. Yeah, but normalization is the
Yes, maybe to talk about normalization.
Persuasion.
Well, but like, okay, thinking about
Gideon, you sound
Sesame
wicked baked,
Street. Thinking about Sesame
just
Street
been
putting
like-
in positive messages, it's like
Yeah.
they're trying to expose kids to a reality, which is that homosexual people exist,
Yeah.
But
yeah,
things
exactly,
like propaganda, that it almost seems like propaganda is manufactured to promote an agenda that is not implicitly true,
Oh, that was the thing.
Like-
that was a. Sorry to interrupt you, but you can carry on if you want.
Yeah, well,
I
I
do
wonder
not
if
believe
this
in
would go into the
homosexuals.
definition, like maybe propaganda is a thing that exists to warp what's actually real,
Yeah.
like racist propaganda and sexist propaganda. It promotes this idea that women are inferior, black people
this
are
is a strange thing
inferior.
about. I'd like to know what the actual definition of propaganda is, because if the propaganda is homosexuals are real, that's
They're not real.
Exactly.
I don't think
exist.
saying
That's the
homosexuals
illusion.
are real could be ever labeled as propaganda. It
Why?
is a
Why
material
not?
reality, and your exposure to it is not propaganda. It fucking exists, bro. It follows logic. You're gonna go out in the world and you're gonna meet somebody that's gay one day. So showing
But
Right, but then there'll be propaganda that say.
How
But there's
about the
people
other
But can
who
they, but can they
like.
prove?
All right, we're
Can
talking
they really
over
prove
each
that they're
other.
gay?
Let Darwin
This is
speak.
what I wasn't
Hold
saying
on,
that's
hold
what.
on,
Yeah,
sorry,
I wasn't even saying that's what propaganda is. I'm just saying that's. I'd be interested to see what the definition of propaganda is in
Yeah,
terms
me
of
too.
what does it mean? What is it?
Because I think that's an interesting distinction and maybe necessary. Because
because
propaganda
does
seems to
does it
exist to
just
spread
mean
a
that it's
lie.
false? Yeah, does it just mean that it's completely false?
Let's look it up.
Because is keep calm and carry on like the classic thing from World War II Britain? Is that propaganda? Because technically it's propaganda, kind of.
How is it technically propaganda?
Because it's like.
How do you personally define propaganda?
This is what I'm kind of working out myself. It's always like because just in my head it's like the government trying to set the mindsets of the people.
What is the mindset?
Alright, let
trying
me
to
read
set
the
to is the actual
definition.
material
I have
reality.
the
Yeah, here we go.
definition.
Define it by like
Yeah, go ahead.
leading to a
interesting.
decision.
Okay,
Yeah.
give it to us, Butchers.
Okay. The spreading of ideas, information, or rumor for the purpose of helping or injuring an institution, a cause, or a person. And then another one, which is pretty much the same thing, but I'll read it. Ideas, facts, or allegations spread deliberately to further one's cause or to damage an opposing cause. So according to the dictionary, Sesame
Yeah.
Street
Is
is propaganda.
and
I
would
knew
carry
it.
on.
I would actually
Propaganda.
say all media is propaganda.
Yeah, that definition is terrible because it applies to literally
Nah,
anything.
media. You could have media that's not trying
Present
to.
me one example.
Because just mindless entertainment with no
One thing.
boxing.
Boxing?
Yeah, boxing.
Don't they wear like brand names and shit on their shorts to
Oh.
sell you shit?
Yeah, but that's the concept. I mean, the concept of boxing.
Right, but we're not talking about the fucking concept.
Weather
We're talking about the
Yes,
material
I'm
reality of
talking about.
boxing,
I'm
bro.
talking about the concept of boxing.
Well,
Weather
I just
Channel
asked
is not
for the
propaganda.
example.
I'm talking about just
Like,
boxing.
hey, you're speaking over each other. Enough.
The propaganda would be from the adverts, yeah, but like in terms of all media, like because like there's the you could have But it depends. You could have media that's not just for a cause. What about you? What about a YouTube video of just like a cat fighting? Is that propaganda?
Well,
I mean, if it's designed to
decoy-
distract you so that you don't hurt an institution or an entity, it's designed to
What if
keep
it's
you
not?
away from
What
important.
if
Well,
it's
the
not? What if it's not
definition-
designed for that?
YouTube.
What if it's just what if someone just filmed their cat fighting for lol, put it on YouTube?
According to the dictionary
Would that be-
definition, that would still be propaganda, because the dictionary definition, I think, is insufficient. It really just said it's anything designed to promote a cause. So if somebody uploaded
How
their
is that?
cat farting,
Yeah.
the cause is to show us their fucking cat fartings, and they
I guess
did
what
it.
they. I guess what
They
they.
want to
I
convince
guess
the
it's what they
kid
mean by
that that shit
cause.
fart.
I guess what they mean by cause because
I got an idea.
that just wanting to upload a funny video of your cat fighting isn't a cause. It's just a motivation, which isn't the same as like a cause.
Well, the cause could be to get as many subscribers as you want or something. I mean, I don't agree
True.
with this definition.
It's
I
true.
don't know how you guys feel. I feel like it's
definition is dog shit.
insufficient. Yeah, I don't think that it works.
I think it shows how
I would stop that.
difficult it is to put your finger on it.
I don't
Gideon,
think
what
it's
were
like
you
a-
saying?
when you're being propaganda.
Let
me just say
Gideon
that.
contribute. Gideon has said nothing. Can Gideon speak? Gideon, please speak.
Thanks. What's it called? Oh yeah. I would stop the propaganda. Had the intention of leading you to a conclusion, but without really
So-
making. Like, I think that's. Well, I just think that's it. I don't think
Do
there's
you agree with the dictionary definition, Gideon?
is part of it, but like, if you're not like being led to think something, and you're like, I guess like very, you have boundaries of like on your perception, I guess, like, it's, I don't know, fuck it, I'm not gonna finish that.
Well,
Alright.
would the cat farting video be propaganda according to you?
Hell yeah, what the fuck.
It's pro cat and pro fart.
Both.
This is what I think. This is why. But like, I think there needs to be some sort of intent to make people to shift values or
That video in
people.
itself may not
Let's-
be propaganda, but like,
That's what I mean. That's what I
Let's
mean.
ask the question, what do you guys think about what we were just talking about? That maybe it's better to say that things manufactured with the intent of promoting a lie is propaganda?
I would say
that's-
yeah.
Something that is not
that.
true.
I think that's too limited.
What
to
is
be
truth?
honest.
that's too
What
much.
did you say, Darwin?
Too
I think
limited.
that's too limiting, to be honest, because your propaganda may be that you think something that maybe is true, but you like trying to like convince other people to think that shit is still like, it's still
Can
propaganda.
you give an example of something you think would be propaganda that's also truthful?
Okay. The first thing that comes to mind is like, okay, black people are physically superior to white people in most sports or something like that. Let's say that I'm a black supremacist and I want to convince people of that. Now, if you look at the numbers or whatever the fuck, then you can arguably say that's true, but it's still like a kind of supremacist propaganda. That makes sense.
But if it's true statistically, if we follow the material reality and say that black people are physically more able to compete in sports than other races, informing people of that is just teaching them. It's not meant to be propaganda. It's meant to challenge the propaganda.
But it's
that
fitting,
white people are
it's fitting
superior
into
in
my
every way.
narrative about
Well, if it's reality,
superiority.
it fits into your narrative. That doesn't make
like
it
I can draw
propaganda.
other conclusions from that. You
What's
know
the
what I mean?
difference between propaganda and teach someone?
Keyword is it's like a statistic. So the most that you could do is just try
So
to
you don't
verify
think
yourself.
teaching that one race is superior to another for the
But
sake of a
Darwin, wouldn't
narrative
that
is
be-
propaganda?
But Darwin, according to the question we're asking, wouldn't that facet of it be the lie? Like, okay, if you're using a true statistic that black people are better at competing in sports, you're using this truthful statistic to sway people to the lie that therefore, you know, black people should, like, I don't know, kill everybody else or rule the world or whatever kind of supremacist ideology this guy is trying to get you to go towards. Wouldn't that be the untruth? And that would
Yeah,
be the
but I'm saying
propaganda?
I think
if I'm putting all these billboards up that say niggas are superior, therefore eliminate whitey immediately or something like that,
that would be
it's
great.
still
I think you
propaganda. Like I'm
should.
still
I think you should
pushing
do
my
that.
idea.
I
If
saw
Yeah,
you
some
if you
scary
but that
manipulate,
I'm
wouldn't.
not saying it's part of like the narrative is what I'm saying. Like it's being
I
used
think
for
like
propaganda purposes.
if you were telling someone like a fact, like you just found out a fact and you were just telling someone like just for the sake of it to be like, did you hear this? Like, do you know this? And you tell them a fact and they're like, oh, interesting. But if you like, would it become propaganda if you were telling them that fact because you wanted them, because you had a plan, like a sort of like another reason for telling them that, like an ulterior motive.
I'd like to respond directly to Darwin because I think he was onto something.
Go for it.
Okay.
If you took an observable reality, let's assume that there's statistics to back up the assertion that black people are more physically able to compete in sports than any other race, right? If you take this material reality and you bend it to fit something that defies like logic, like there's no natural like procession from black people are really good at sports to like kill every other race on the earth. There's no logical like step of thought that arrives at that. So if you take material reality
Sports
and bend
world.
it and defy logic and say, holy shit, we gotta kill every white person because black people are better
Because
at
we need
sports.
sports world.
Right.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. It's illogical, and that's when it
If you
becomes
don't get the
propaganda to
scores,
me. Is
then
when you defy like rationale and logic, and you bend material reality statistics to fit your narrative because you want to pursue something that does not directly follow the reality. That's when it becomes propaganda for me. Otherwise, it's just a fact. Facts are facts.
Yeah,
Gay
I
people
think that
exist.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't even use those extreme examples though. I just say like, okay, we say, oh, okay, black people are clearly better at sports, so therefore, let's make sure that we don't give white people sports scholarships or something like that.
Waste,
Or like
yeah,
give them
Well,
waste
I
of
think.
less.
You know,
Just give them all
white
to the
people
back.
already
Give them all
get
to the
way
back
less
guys.
sports scholarships. Like that, just naturally, it just happens. Dude, nobody had to say it. It's reality.
Woo!
White dudes suck at a lot of sports, bro. They're good at like two sports, like cricket and rugby, and it's because nobody else fucking plays cricket or rugby.
No. They suck at rugby too.
Okay, they suck at rugby,
Don't fret.
but like cricket, they're good at
They
cricket.
suck at they get
Or
their ass
baseball.
kicked.
I
We
just
should
think that
make
that's
white-
because black people don't
They're
actually
good at
play those
baseball.
sports, honestly. I think
Pakistanis
if you like
are pretty
started
good at
putting black
cricket.
people in cricket, they just kick ass too, honestly.
You know, I
But
think it's
this is
actually
besides the point,
interesting.
so let's get back on topic.
It's interesting. Well, yeah, we should. So I shouldn't say what I was gonna say, but I'll say it anyway. What I was gonna say was that I'm surprised that white people are not more butthurt by the fact that black people overwhelmingly are represented in like the NBA and the NFL. You would think by now that white people would be fighting for like white class of sports. Like, okay, black people are physically superior, so we must have the white NFL and the white NBA, you know.
Nah, bro,
I'm
we just bought
surprised that
guns.
they
Give it a couple
We
more
just bought
years.
guns. We were like, don't worry
Yeah.
about it. We're gonna take the physicality out of it.
But I think that's like admitting defeat, though. Like honestly,
Yeah, it's
why would
true.
you
Right, they're
It's
too
It's
proud.
like going like they're better ass guys. You can't
Yeah,
be
it's
like,
absolutely.
let's
We
just
need
make
to
our own
leave
shitty fucking
the white
NBA and
NBA.
be done with it.
Well, okay, let's get back to
Would you
the
say
question.
that all advertising is propaganda?
Police brutality is a
Well,
white
wait.
NBA.
No.
Yes,
Let me.
yes, I would.
I
Wait,
would also.
wait. Let me take us to the next point. Because this is, it's like the most important distinction, right? Wondering whether or not we have to include this to have a better definition of propaganda. Because if it doesn't rely on spreading something that is untrue, then literally any statement, any schooling curriculum, any sharing of facts or teaching, period, not just advertising, would also be propaganda. If it
Yeah.
exists to motivate you to a cause, but if that cause is just to expose you to the statistical truth, then I feel like this definition is insufficient, you
Yeah.
know? And I feel like the untruth, something that is untrue, I feel like this, I mean, I appreciate your example, Darwin, but I still think that it holds that what ultimately the propaganda is not telling everybody that black people are statistically better at sports. The propaganda would be what you do with this
Using it for a
information.
purpose.
Yeah, to say that, you know, so therefore kill all white people or something.
Because,
No, that's what I'm
because,
Yeah,
like,
that's happened though.
because otherwise every single piece of communication ever would be propaganda.
But this
But,
is where I
like,
disagree.
I think this, if like we had the same like definition, but like the word propaganda was in itself a pejorative word to mean like bad, you know, like oh, that's propaganda, because that's how people use it.
Well,
Really.
what about just untrue? I mean, does this hold? Can we think of any other example where there has been truthful propaganda?
Well, like I said, it's not truthful propaganda, but the keep calm and carry on thing is
okay,
is
but I
like
ask this,
it's like
right?
a sort of
When you say untrue,
like where is trying to
and
get the
opinions
message
be
across
untrue.
that like despite the fact that we're getting the shit bombed out of us, that we're, you know, like if as long as you just kind of carry on, deal with it, it's all gonna be, as in it will end soon. It's reminding people like this is shit now, but it'll end soon, and that will keep people's
Darwin
morale
was
up
gonna.
for the war.
Darwin,
You said you were asking for truthful propaganda. I think you know, you ever seen those condom ads? I think they're pretty truthful, you know, with the one where the kid's screaming at the mall. If you don't want a kid,
No.
you gotta wear it or you're gonna have one. So
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
I
wouldn't the
mean,
propaganda there be that like kids are unpleasant or something?
yeah,
first of
Yeah,
all,
but this is this is
but
exactly
that's
what I
true.
said. Can
The
an
true
opinion be
propaganda is
untrue? Can an
Okay, hold
you
on.
gotta
opinion be
buy their
untrue?
brand.
yes,
Alright.
yeah, true.
Wait,
Also,
so Darwin. Guys, we have to take turns, please.
We need a
Darwin,
talking
what
pillow.
did you just say?
Talking pillow. No, I said that's my thing. That's what I'm really looking at. Can an opinion be untrue?
Okay, maybe we should add the classification that it's not necessarily false, it just is not observably true, you know? Because you can't prove, for example, that we shouldn't murder all white people, you know? That's not
Isn't it just
untrue.
unwarranted?
You could-
It's just unwarranted conclusions based on anything. It can be factual or not factual.
Yeah.
If
Also,
you try
Well,
to
I
take me
think-
from
I
something
think-
that is true to an illogical conclusion because you're trying to convince me, you go, well, if I say this thing that you know is true, the next thing I say is also true because it relies on the first thing being true to be true. It's the association.
Yeah, but that was
doesn't
also
matter.
a specific example because, like, I think that Gideon just gave us a good example, you know, with the condom commercial. Like, how
That's
does that
marketing.
kind of a thing
I think-
function? It's not that anything necessarily is being false, is presented as false, just something that can't be proven to be true that clearly has some kind of an opinion behind it, and
there's
so it
another-
exists to push people.
There's another element to this I've just thought of where like it doesn't have to be. It's not like necessarily that the propaganda is telling you like a lie or a truth, but you could like, because I'm just thinking back to the golden age propaganda times where where they could be like, say, a war movie, but like at the time of the war, or like the old Soviet sort of movies, but like or kind of things like that. Although they weren't very factual, but like all completely. But like, say you're presenting like something terrible that happened, and things are literally true that can be proved and are facts, but you're presenting them in a way that is just kind of curved enough to kind of give the impression, like, to create a certain impression with these facts.
Like the death toll of communism, including all the Nazis that were killed during World War II by the Soviet Union.
That's what I meant. I meant to say that like propaganda kind of like comes off as like I just like the way like they try to lead you into a conclusion you might have not have normally made to align
illogical
with.
conclusions.
It doesn't have to be illogical.
The differentiation here.
It's like
Oh,
like-
but it's not even necessarily some illogical though, if you think about it. Like
Yeah, it might just be
people keep
uncalled
saying
for.
propaganda,
Just
so
ends up
thinking of like the old
aligning
time
with
wartime
someone else's
shit.
ulterior.
Wait, you're speaking over Darwin, Gideon.
I think my connection is bad or something like that. It's probably
I
like
can hear you. I think people are
delay.
just speaking over each other. Stop it,
Matt. Sorry.
Darwin, please.
But what I was saying was that I don't think it necessarily would be an illogical conclusion like the whole time, like the example of the wartime propaganda, right? Like where they were saying the Chinese people are coming, they're about to fuck us up and take our women and all this other shit. But I mean, like, you know, that wasn't really illogical. Like that shit really could have happened, like if they won the goddamn war. So it's like, you know,
Can you say that again?
It's an opinion and it is a narrative, but it's not by default untrue or like
Right.
Can you
it's
say
still
that part again?
That's why I don't like the illogical word. I think that what's more accurate is to say that it can't be proven true, even though it could possibly be true. The example he gave, Bryce, you didn't hear it, was propaganda during wartime when there was like anti-Chinese propaganda, like, oh, they're gonna come take all our women and kill us all and stuff. It's like that's not necessarily illogical or untrue. It just can't be proven to be true, you know? And so I think by promoting this opinion,
what was the basis for the conclusion that the Chinese people were going to come and kill everybody and take our women?
Just animosity between them.
That it was possible.
Animosity
I think that's that's why Darwin just said that. It's not illogical because it's technically a possibility. The problem is that you kind of take it and treat it as the inevitable conclusion. So it's not illogical. It's just a leap in logic.
Like cold, like most.
It's not sound. It doesn't stand true to any
propaganda,
reason, in my opinion. That like being angry with another nation means they're going to storm. It's fear mongering. It is not the next logical conclusion.
But like
animosity to China, that their next
the Cold War
is
a good example of this because like the Cold War was definitely these two sides. They were waiting for a weakness to destroy the other, essentially. And like if so, like the propaganda was it had some. I'm mostly thinking of American. I don't really know much about the Soviet propaganda, but like I imagine it was pretty similar. But like the American propaganda was like this is there are spies, there are these things that you could that aren't illogical, as we're saying, like as in like they're not completely outside the fact.
Illogical to me does not mean that it's outside of the realm of possibility. It doesn't follow any clear sense of reason. It is not necessarily the conclusion. Whatever is decided
the problem
is said
is
to be
that
determined.
The problem is that you can't prove a negative. And we encounter this in all types of discussions, you know. You can't prove that Jesus is not God, you know. So you can't really argue with Christians. I can't prove that Jesus is not God. I can't prove that there's no unicorns on the moon. The burden of proof is on you, ultimately. You know?
You can't prove that every other person in the that you meet on the street might be a communist or whatever. You can't prove that these plots aren't happening like
right. It's not that these things aren't possible. It's just that you can't prove a negative. So to make that narrative is problematic.
To make people go, well, that is believable, and so that's because propaganda kind of has to be a little bit believable for it to really be effective.
Well, all falsehoods usually have like
advertising is propaganda.
Huh?
This is why I said that all advertising is propaganda.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
This is why I also agree that all advertising is propaganda, and propaganda is just advertising. It's like but obviously but for political or social engineering like purposes. But like, because
What do you think
it's.
of me?
What did you say? Did you say what do you think of me?
Yeah.
No, I said. No, I said. So what do you think of memes? Memes.
You're right.
I heard you go.
Oh,
What do you think of me?
I thought you were just going. What
I think you're great, Gideon.
Yeah, yeah.
I said memes, bro.
Memes.
I think you rule.
I mean,
You heard what we wanted to hear.
Thanks.
There's plenty of fucking propagandist memes, but like, is a meme, but is a shit post a meme? No, is a shit post propaganda?
Memes are the
It can be.
right?
Actually, they are.
Is a meme that's like, you know, when like when something and there's a picture. Is that propaganda?
Okay,
Well, if we go with the
This is
dictionary definition,
propaganda, right?
Then yeah.
On 4chan, they
Anything
always
that
say
tells you how or what to think,
right?
or anything that attempts to influence your thought process in any kind of way, to some end, is propaganda. That's how.
So Darwin, do you agree with the dictionary definition then that pretty much everything then is propaganda, even like the statement of a fact?
I mean,
I
wouldn't say everything, but I would say, like I said, anything that specifically exists to like shift your mindset towards something or the other. Like that's its like purpose of propaganda.
So
But
all
can I
education
ask
is
you?
propaganda?
I'm actually starting
to
to
influence your
swing
mind,
that way.
to influence
Yeah.
your mind and beliefs and shit like that.
But can I ask you,
dictionary
Darwin?
definition.
Really?
That's what I was
Well, I was
saying,
gonna
right?
ask. I'll ask Darwin and Ramona. Wouldn't that make literally every statement propaganda? Because based on that, I mean, if I'm trying to sway, even if I'm just quoting a fact at you, some statistic, I'm trying to sway your worldview towards one where you have now integrated this fact. Otherwise, why else am I sharing it? I mean, we share facts when we're having things like heated debates and stuff, you know, to sway our opponent. Like, oh, you didn't know that
It's
this or that.
it's about the intention behind it.
Yeah, my
You know what
intention
I'm
is to
saying? You
get
can see
you
like,
to
oh
come
yeah,
on
it's
my
raining
side and agree
outside.
with me.
You know what I'm saying? If I
Most
tell somebody
most
it's
people
raining
just kind
outside,
of
that's
share
not
facts.
propaganda.
Hold on, let Darwin finish.
But
Darwin.
if I say it's raining outside, therefore you should kick back and have some hot chocolate with me or something like that, that is propaganda, because I have
So-
an intention in mind. I'm trying to work an angle.
Yeah, he's using
At
language.
that point, why even have the specification
Language
of
is
propaganda?
propaganda
Because
too.
literally anything becomes propaganda. Anything with an intended purpose that is spoken is then propaganda. All education is propaganda. Everything that is spoken with a purpose to
Education
influence your
is
worldview.
propaganda.
Speaking
the way
is
To be taught about it is
propaganda.
not propaganda.
All right, wait. Ramona, hold on. Ramona, I want to hear what Ramona has to say, because Ramona just said you agree with the definition, the dictionary definition, and Bryce and I seem to believe that we need at least one modifier or distinction. Well, what do you think?
See, I'm like the worst dissenting opinion. I'm like devil's advocate here, and I think everything in information is propaganda, but I'm also taking it a step further and saying that it doesn't need intent.
Ooh, what do you mean by this?
Doesn't even work.
I don't think it, because I think there's a commonality right now that propaganda needs to be something intentional, that you're intending to change one or more person's minds towards something, but I don't think the intent is necessary.
I could see that. I mean, especially we
Because
all seem to agree that
going back to the cat fart video, like if I just record my cat farting and I post it on YouTube and 6 people watch it, I'm probably not intending it that way, but someone could watch that, and that video could, like, what's the word I'm looking for? It could, like, improve a person's opinion of cats as a whole, right? And I didn't intend it that way. I'm not pro-cat. or
I
pro
think
fart for that matter. But
Then I would say that isn't propaganda.
I'd say that's
Because you
isn't
didn't set out with
propaganda
that
either. I'd say even if someone it's like if what's his name? Who's the guy who shot John Lennon?
The Catcher in the Rye dude.
Catcher in
I
the
forgot
Rye
his
dude.
name.
It's like
yeah.
I keep wanting to say
that
John
would,
Wilkes Booth, but it's
like,
definitely
that
not
would
him.
say like, well, this was kill John Lennon propaganda because he
They banned that book.
took
That
it
shit's
that
crazy.
way.
He read a book about some fucking kid
I
going
mean,
through
the book
depression.
the book is quite tame by today's standards. It
Well, it is
swears,
interesting.
but
Things without intent can come to
yeah. But I would say that is,
function that way.
but I would say
gonna
that doesn't make it propaganda. And also,
Gideon, what were you
I
gonna
don't think
say?
that's propaganda.
I don't know where it fits in this, but I was just thinking like, how would what would propaganda? How would propaganda affect someone with PTSD? You know, or like certain words would just trigger a whole sort of things. You know,
It
uh,
happens.
anybody could be guiding this individual into thinking into certain ways, maybe to like commit a crime or act with violence. So
Are you thinking of like MK Ultra or something?
I was somewhere around there. You know, I was gonna say earlier that like on 4chan there's a rumor that like certain boards are like
I love this one.
observed by the FBI and intentionally uh, like psychologically fucking with you by like just throwing up the randomest shit and like leading you into like just like supplying that like board with rabbit holes for people to get lost in. You know what I'm saying? Like they call them psycho ops or some shit. Where they try to.
That's a lot more direct.
This is getting
but
man.
it is related, I think.
Well,
I
think
honestly
that,
don't know where I was gonna go with that, but
well, I agree with. I think everyone
Done it.
You sound like you're in a snowstorm.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I think that all statements can, whether there's intent behind it or not, can sway people in a direction, and so everything can be propaganda in that sense, because I think everything functions this way. But I don't agree with calling everything propaganda, because I think the usefulness of the word propaganda, if we're trying to come up with a definition so that we can use it and it's a coherent word, I think that it does need a modifier, because what I think propaganda does is exploit this reality, the reality that literally any statement you make will be influential in some capacity, whether you're showing people your cat farting or you're telling them that black people are superior at sports. The exposure to any information will sway people in any direction, but I think the usefulness of having a coherent definition for the word propaganda is to set apart this kind of materials that exist for something much more specific, which I still think that this modifier of, trying to promote something that is not necessarily true as true, I feel like that's an adequate modifier, because I agree with Darwin too. I don't think it has to be illogical or untrue. It just has to be something that's not necessarily true, but that you're promoting as a truth, I think that's the
What
distinction
is the
between
difference between the two?
propaganda.
I think that a good.
Wait, hold on. What'd you say, Bryce?
What is the difference in between saying that if they present me like a determinant factor, like I sent one a minute ago in the public chat that was like, the guy who relaxes is helping the axis. They said a determinant, which is like, don't fucking relax at work or you're helping the enemy. There's no direct like series of understanding. There's no correlation between the two things. They take one thing and then apply some unrealistic, completely fucking stupid conclusion from the preceding thing. They don't make any sense. That's what I mean when I say logical. That nobody would hear a guy is relaxing and immediately go on logical pathways and say he is clearly affirmative
Yeah,
axis.
I
I
agree
think I
with you.
understand. I think
But
I
I
understand
just
what you mean by that.
I agree
yeah.
with you, but I just don't think that I think that it's better to call it not necessarily illogical, because a lot of these things are possible, you know, so it's not illogical in that sense that it's like completely a falsehood.
I think in terms
It's
of it
just that
being,
you can't prove it to be true.
I think in terms of it being like illogical or logical or true or not true, is that it's trying to persuade you with some sort of emotional element, maybe.
Yes.
Because like you look at the posters that are trying to get you to do things obviously in the war, you know, they're trying to tap into a fear or a or like a worry or an emotional they're trying to put you into an emotional state as well as
Yeah,
just
well,
giving you
let's talk about
information.
right now. I mean, we have perfect examples of this right now with all these people now saying and trying to instill fear in people when they say that if we continue in quarantine, you know, the amount of deaths that we'll see from this economic collapse will be far greater than what we would see from the virus alone, you know, and they're using this to promote this idea.
Yeah, exactly.
And that is a possibility, you know. It is
But it doesn't
possible
follow
that
any
they're
clear system of
correct.
reasoning.
But Bryce, I don't.
That doesn't make any sense at all.
And it's the
It
threat.
doesn't make sense. It's
And
unclear.
it's the threat of like more people could die if you go down this route than if you you know, go down our route. Like
Yeah.
People stop paying bills, they're
it's-
gonna die
it's-
immediately.
Well,
it's
Darwin,
not-
what they're
it's
saying.
It's not just going.
Ran out of time.
Here's a fact that's a lie, that might be a lie or could be a truth. I don't know. Here's just a fact that, you know.
I don't think that
it's got an emotional core to it to make people react and go shit.
No,
and
that's
change their
definitely
mind.
bullshit.
I don't think that it's necessarily bullshit or illogical. I think it's a true possibility, but the problem is, and Bryce, I think we agree, we're just disagreeing on the framing of it. The problem is that you can't prove it to be true, and they're promoting this idea like it is true. If we don't go back to
predicting
work,
the future as well.
well, yeah. So it's not that this thing is not possible. It's just that you're saying that it is inevitable, and that's false. You know, it's not false because it's not a possibility. It's false because you can't prove it to be true. So saying it is true assertively makes it propaganda.
I think that, as it almost always happens between you, that it's like a semantical disagreement. Illogical to me doesn't mean that it is outside of the possibility. It just doesn't follow sense. It can't be directly reasoned.
Right, I agree with your underlying
That's the only
sentiment.
real, like,
I agree with that.
the
as
only
well.
the only
because
defining part
that's
of it to me is that whatever you're proposing is the next step based on the condition you're expressing cannot follow clear reasoning lines, even if it's a possibility in some abstract like fucking 0.0025% chance. If it is outside of the what I immediately consider to be the next step, to me it counts as propaganda. Like saying that. You said, what if we stay in quarantine, the economic collapse deaths greatly outnumber the deaths of the coronavirus deaths?
Right.
There's no system of logic that makes that make sense. And
I
because
don't.
they
But I
use one
disagree
thing,
with.
It's just saying that there's things that people kind of know, which is the economy's doing bad because of the coronavirus, and people are dying of the coronavirus. So they take those things that people know and say and turn it through kind of simplicity and kind of emotional manipulation to be like, well, the economy being bad equals people dying because
in capitalist countries,
because there's a leak there. And
Yeah, there's
How
a
is that
huge leap,
logical
but
at all?
it doesn't follow logic.
It's not
Maybe we just
completely
disagree.
illogical. I agree with your underlying sentiments. The only reason I don't like the word illogical is because when you're trying to have these debates with the people spreading this kind of information, and Bryce, I absolutely agree with everything you're saying. I'm just saying that I think it's important to think about the semantics here, because when you say it's illogical, then they're going to come back at you with facts, which are the things that they're using to promote this possibility, which is a real possibility, they're using that to say that, so therefore it is logical, because there are statistical facts that they're using to back up this argument. I agree with you that it's a huge leap, and I don't agree with these people at all, but I just don't want to call it illogical, because then they're going to say, well, look at this, and this. They are using statistical evidence to back up their opinion, but that's all it is, an opinion, so they can't put it out into the world as being true. It's not, I just don't like the word illogical, simply because I think that it will weaken our arguments when we encounter these kinds of people, because there is logical reasons that they're saying this. It's not completely illogical.
Also kind of disguise like logic. Like logic doesn't necessarily have to mean have to lead to fact. I mean, it's meant to. Like logical.
I just like the word unproven better.
Yeah,
I don't like it because it again applies to everything.
Meant to make you think that, because it's meant to make you go, this leads to this, but so it's logical in a way, but like it's
if you do some fucking mental gymnastics, anything can be logical.
That's what I mean.
But the argument here is that the average person, when presented with the preceding condition, you know, going back to if you're relaxing, you're helping the axis thing. No average human would I walk up to you and say, if you relax, what are you doing? Do they respond immediately with assisting the enemy in this war?
But
Nobody
this is my
draws that
problem.
conclusion. It has to be made for that. Because
I
it
don't
does
think
not
that's-
follow.
And that's the point of that's the point of the
Cannot happen.
Hold on,
war
Decoy.
trial.
Let
That
Bryce
war.
finish. Let Bryce finish, please.
But he's finished.
No one will make the conclusion that a man relaxing at work is helping the enemy without the nudge of the propaganda changing the social perception of relaxing. When that happens, you have people start following logic to arrive at it, to conform to the idea that's been presented to them, because uneducated people do that. The issue with saying that, you know, the conclusion isn't necessary is that nothing is conclusion. We talk about something happening in the future. So there would be nothing, you know, minus like scientific cause and effect that we can measure and see. It's consistent. Nothing else, specifically political, it can be proven to be necessary. Everything is just maybe happening. Make it any less valuable or make it propaganda.
Sorry. I don't think it's a useless distinction, though, because it goes back to what I was saying about proving a negative. Like, it's not that the thing itself is illogical. It's not illogical necessarily that there's unicorns or Jesus is God. If someone says Jesus is God, that's not illogical and it's not logical, you know? I would say that you can't prove it, you know? So the method that you use to get you to this conclusion is illogical, and I think that that's what you're saying. Like, we obviously agree on this. I just think saying the thing itself is illogical, the actual supposition, Jesus is God, I don't think that it's logical or illogical. What's illogical is the process that got you here, you know? So that's the only reason I think that it's an important distinction, just because it technically is a possibility, because like you just said, everything is possible at all times, you know? What we're really critiquing is the process, like you've been saying, the thing that gets you from point A to point B. That's the problem. And it is a logical fallacy, you know, trying to... So I agree with you. I just think calling the actual supposition itself illogical... But either way, we agree
this is
with...
the issue between the two of us then, because I wasn't clear about that then. I don't think the supposition is what's illogical. I think the relationship in between what is given to you as the determinant of the supposition, the relationship between the two is illogical. It doesn't follow clear, like instantaneous reasoning. You know, it's not cause and effect directly, and because of that, it's presenting you something that you are now supposed to believe is a direct relationship of cause and effect, even if it doesn't follow your logic or reason.
I think as that the medium and the mode of how the propaganda is delivered is how it makes these seemingly illogical things like make sense in your head as you see them. So because like with the what was it, the he who relaxes helps the axis. It's like, you know, like no one's, that's not, there's no direct kind of proof to that. It's just meant to be a poster to make you think, I'm my wasted time means I'm not helping the total war effort against, the enemy, etc. But it's done through this picture of, or this idea of like, if you're, chilling out, not doing much, you helping Hitler because he's in the car.
I don't think the mode of delivery affects whether or not it's propaganda. If something is proposed to you, and this is just my opinion. Again, we're gonna have discourse here. Is if something is proposed to you as necessarily true based on a condition, it doesn't matter how they deliver that. It can be a picture, it can be a radio broadcast, it can be sold to you in any manner. If they try to defy, to make a relationship necessary that is not necessary, and to influence you into believing it is then necessary, it counts as propaganda to me. I mean, we're all victims of everybody in this chat has been fooled by some form of propaganda at some point in your life. It's just the nature of it. It is so subversive and effective in what it does that we're all influenced by it. But I don't think the mode matters here. The presentation it doesn't matter because we still define every mode of propaganda as propaganda, and we're trying to decide what that is.
Let him finish, decoy.
Finish now.
You keep starting when he's not done. I didn't hear the last bit of Bryce, what he said. Bryce, what did you say that last part?
I said I don't think that the mode is really at all the issue here. Propaganda can be delivered in a lot of different ways to you. What I want to know is what does it need to be to qualify as propaganda? Because we can't just say that it's done with the intent to change your mind, because if you think that something that is untrue is true and I educate you about reality, it's not propaganda because I teach you what the world is really like, what the reality of the whatever you don't understand currently is, or whatever you conditioned into thinking is untrue. It's not propaganda just because it has intent. And the mode that it's presented to doesn't make it propaganda because it comes in so many modes. Right now, I want to know, what does any mode of delivery have to do to be considered propaganda?
Yes, I think this is a good question.
Well, that's the whole conversation we've been having here. That was just what I'm saying.
Wait.
That's what I was asking. But say with the poster of the relaxing axis, blah blah blah, that one. If someone came up, if it was World War II and someone came up to you and you were, I don't know, having a nap, and someone said, if you're laying around, that's basically helping Hitler. Is that propaganda? Is that the same?
No,
as
because they were influenced by the original poster to ever make that conclusion. It's a consequence of propaganda.
What if they weren't? What if they were just making the same argument, but instead of on a poster, it was someone going, you might as well be helping Hitler if you're just going to lay around all day.
But he was just the expression of an opinion.
Exactly, but is that?
It's propaganda? Not the same thing.
Why isn't it the same thing?
I'm not saying from the same place, man. A dude at your job saying
I'm not disagreeing
on your ass is you helping the Nazis doesn't mean shit to me. It's not going to influence me. But if the government says, "Hey, yo,"
no, I'm saying
the poster on their ass.
But I'm saying that the poster and the guy are essentially trying to get the same message to this person, but a poster's doing it through the art and the sort of the I don't know what you call it, the sort of this a little more abstract medium. While if a guy was just I think if you're being lazy, you're basically helping the Nazis. Yeah, I do agree. I think one's propaganda and one isn't, but I'm just wondering why that is.
Yeah, can I interject here? I feel like to think of these discussions, a few of the ones we've had recently in here about Joe Biden and stuff, on either side of the argument, you just have people using the observable reality to support a conclusion and basically putting it forward as supposed true, this is how opinions are formulated, period. Many of us can't prove our opinions. So it's interesting, and I think Decoy was just starting to raise this question too. When is it propaganda and when is it not? If I'm assertively inserting my opinion about a thing that can't be proven true, I can't prove that. Let's say I think that Joe Biden is the best way to move forward, even though we all dislike him, and a lot of people have this message right now, that that it doesn't matter if you don't like Joe Biden, you have to vote for him because the election of the Democratic candidate will ultimately be a win. And then other people are saying, no, it won't be any better. And in fact, it might be worse towards achieving this shared goal we both have, you know, of the basic reality being improved upon, you know, like this is kind of how propaganda functions, like with Darwin's example, you know, it's like you're using statistical evidence to assert an opinion, you know, so maybe there has to be an extra modifier as well.
I think I have.
Yeah, so I've got a question. I think we might be probably going to ask the same question, but like, so what would would people just trying to convince you of what you should do and their political opinion be propagandizing to you?
But that's what I said. The extra modifier should be is the fact that it's something created with the intention to convince someone of something.
But you can't argue the intent in this case. Of course, if you believe something to be true, you're going to have intent to convince it's true. I think the modifier here needs to be that you are in a position of authority to make this statement as true. Because the average fucking Joe American telling me some shit don't mean nothing to me because you got no authority on that. But somebody of authority in the field telling me information that is false or misleading is definitely propaganda because they have the authority to assert it as true without my ability to doubt because of access.
Well, let's bring up 4chan again, what Gideon was talking about. This is from a separate angle. But we know for a fact that 4chan manufactures certain propaganda. Like, they do things like pretend to be LGBT groups and make, like, pro-pedophilia media and content and stuff and spread it around to get people to believe that, you know, the LGBT community is all pro-pedophile and shit, you know. They don't necessarily really have authority, but they're kind of, they're trying to pretend, I guess, that they have some sort of position. What about a thing like that, Bryce? But what would the authority be even in this situation?
I mean, let's look at as a good example. Let's look at any LGBT organization, and whenever an LGBT organization that is run and like organized by by whatever queer people, whatever the fuck. I'm not going to worry about the terminology.
But they don't just emulate organizations, I want to say, too.
Well, whatever they do. Somebody with the authority to speak on the individual reality of being LGBT, if it's fucking 10,000 of them saying the same thing, they're trying to simulate a group authority. If they present it as a group, they say, we're the LGBT fucking advancement community of the United States, and they say, hey, we love fucking kids. They're trying to simulate the authority of being this fucking LGBT mouthpiece, and then proliferating this false information. They don't actually have authority, but if the general public believes them to have authority, then they are going to consume that media as if it does have authority.
I think this is a really interesting viewpoint.
Wait, hold on. I want to ask Bryce something. So, Bryce, if somebody's posing... What? Let me just ask him before we move on.
Yeah,
so if somebody is... All right, say your point.
Well... what was I talking about? There's
Butchers, what are you asking me?
Yeah, just asking.
I wanted to ask, so the authority in the instance of 4chan posing... Oh my God.
You have to wait, Butchers. Finish what you're saying.
Yeah, okay, so basically, like...
No, you have to wait, motherfucker.
I thought you said you have
to. Give her a second.
Yeah, but then...
Just say it! Oh my God, say it. I give you the authority.
Okay, so, like, instead of, like, the modifier of, like, it comes from a place of authority, what if it's, like, propaganda isn't just, it like, has the air of authority, and people assume it's an authority, and that's what helps them change their mind. That was all I was going to say. It was just a little short thing. Now you can ask your question.
Okay, my question was, in this instance of 4chan posing as like LGBT individuals, not necessarily organizations too, would the presumed authority be that they have the authority to speak on the gay experience?
I would say, yeah, in that specific example. I mean, like, it's like when I want to talk about feminism, I don't go talk to a dude about feminism. I go talk to feminist women I know because they are authorities on the experience of being a feminist and feminine experience. In the same way that I would respect, in the discussion of the gay experience, I respect talking to somebody who's gay more than somebody who thinks they know some shit about what being gay is. I mean, the authority here is the experience to say, this is my reality.
Well, what about these things we see a lot of in like this disinformation age, where there's also things like just like images created by random people, we don't know where they come from, there's no source or anything, that just has
Anonymous
things
source.
like fake, that just has like fake statistics or something, and people post it around, and they don't come from anywhere or anything. Like, would the fake authority there just be like what?
I think in that case, and this might be a little abstract, is that we have been taught that statistics are just like, people just fucking espouse statistics all the fucking time, and they don't cite sources. Just like 85% of the world owns, less wealth than the top 1%, but they may have never actually seen any material proof that is a true that is a true statement. But they use statistics as the reason. So if somebody who is not educated on like citing sources and checking validity see posts, a good example is, do you remember the Donald Trump tweet that went around forever ago? It wasn't even a Donald Trump tweet, and it was talking about how Bernie was going to tax 50% of minimum wage income, that to pay for Medicare for all. If you were making $7.25 an hour, he was going to give you $15 an hour and then tax it down to $7.25. Like, that was what people were saying. It was completely false, but it was all written under President Trump's Twitter picture, like it was a tweet, and people were just proliferating it all over the place, saying, "Look at what fucking Bernie's gonna do," with no further need for validity, because in today's day and age, nobody fucking reads the article. They read the headline and they post it because they're lazy and they want the instant gratification of, oh, this thing must be fact. Read it on the fucking internet. Like, we joke about it a lot, like, oh, if it's on the internet, it must be true. But some motherfuckers operate like that. They read some shit on the internet, and without any further proof, they take it as truth. So a statistic showing up on a Facebook page is going to convince most fucking boomers whether it's valid or not. They just go, oh, it's a statistic, must be true. And then they incorporate it in how they sell their ideas to people, and it becomes socially true, even if it has no material reality. Now people just think that shit because the falsehood has been proliferated at that rate because of the spread and control of social media. It's subversive, but it serves the same purpose.
I like your idea that the modifier is something of authority,
Right.
I feel like maybe we can find a better way to word it. Maybe. I don't know. Because that's interesting, because you're right. I think that, like, creating an air of authority, people do things like this when they try to put numbers, just having numbers, like you're saying, people are like, oh, there's numbers. Like, it must be true. There's math here. There's science here, versus just telling your opinion, when you edit it into some little thing that looks like a graph and all this, or even just some image with information quoted on it. It presents differently than if it's just some guy telling you his opinion, So it is channeling some air of authority, but that's interesting, because it feels like it still feels like it's too nebulous of a modifier to be like perfect, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think that we can narrow it down from authority to something else. I just don't. The first thing that came to mind to me was like, I straight up don't believe shit that fucking random boomers tell me, whether it is true or not.
Fucking
I don't trust their
facts.
authority on that shit.
Oh my
Bring me that
god.
shit. You got no
That's
evidence.
what I'm talking about. This is
But
truth.
if the fucking, like, if Michael Parenti was to get up on stage and tell me something about communism, I'm gonna trust what the fuck he says because he's an authority in my mind on the subject. But my dad texted me and saying that communists have killed billions of people over the years has no fucking impact on me because he don't know what the fuck he's talking about.
Yeah, bro, link your sources on that.
Yeah, you better give me a bibliography, bro.
Yeah, factual.
So maybe the difference between propaganda and an opinion does have to do a bit with intention, but the intention to exaggerate your own authority as well.
I
like that. Yeah.
I think from what you're talking about, what I've just been convinced of by listening to this is that propaganda really has just kind of lost meaning in this day and age more than any time.
Well, it's probably always functioned this way, though, hasn't it?
Well, I don't think because with the increase of technology since the last 100 years or just even like decades, the amount of information that you can be exposed to that could be for a variety of intentions and from a variety of opinions and a variety of real authorities or like affectations of authority means I can't even like now I believe that I can't tell what propaganda even means anymore nowadays.
Let's go back.
Even
Let's
more so
revisit
than
our
back.
definition and
Okay.
see if we have come up with proper modifiers, because we agreed that the original definition was too vague, and I have it here. But this is what we started with. Ideas, facts, or allegations spread. Oh, no, it was the spreading of ideas, information, or rumor for the purpose of helping or injuring an institution, a cause, or a person. And then the other one was ideas, facts, or allegations spread deliberately to further one's cause or to damage an opposing cause. And what we agreed was that this was insufficient because everything then would be propaganda, including, any statement anyone makes. So the first modifier,
the second
hold
one
on, we have to come up with our definition.
More right.
So the first modifier we proposed was what? That it has to present something that cannot be proven to be true, right?
Right. Yeah, I'll concede that point away from the use of illogical and say that I accept that because we mean the same thing.
Sentiment. Yeah, because the process towards it is illogical.
Right.
So it's something that can't be proven to be true, and then do we want to add the modifier that it's something that has an underlying intention of being manipulative by establishing some air of authority?
Yeah, the implication of authority, whether true, fucking false. If it's said to be, if it's done with the implication of saying I'm an authority on this because I say it must be true, whether your authority is real or not, it has to be said with the air of authority, I think, for me to consider it propaganda.
I'm going to try to write this down so we can come up with
I'll say in that case that it's not even that. It's propaganda's lost all meaning. It's just that there's so much of it everywhere.
Who's listening to that?
Everywhere.
Yo, chill on me, bro.
Is that Tiny Dancer, bro? That's propaganda.
Oh fuck yeah, that's propaganda.
Fuck it, man, bro.
No, dude, I fuck with that song. Don't let anybody tell you different, bro.
I love it.
Actual, thank you.
Are we still making a phenomenology dictionary where every time we get into definition debates, we fucking put it together?
Yeah, I'm literally typing right now to try to put this into words and see if we agree with it.
Okay.
Are we doing this with every word?
Not every word. Maybe, I don't know. I mean, every word
it might turn out
there's
just the ones that need improved definitions, like a chair. We already defined chair. Oh,
what's the definition of chair?
What about aardvark?
Don't get me. Yeah.
I don't remember what we decided.
Oh, what was it?
There's a whole
You said you.
Well, we had a fight about this.
Yeah, so what was it?
And well, I don't think we ever came to an agreement. Yeah, let's not.
We decided what chairs were.
Well, what was it then?
Did we decide what floor was?
No, I was saying that chairs need more. I was arguing that the definition of chair is insufficient and needed improvement.
We did improve it. You don't remember? We should listen to the audio again because I remember coming to a conclusion all together.
Have it.
Edwin was there too. I remember it was me, you, Edwin.
What was your conclusion on the chair? What was your conclusion on the chair?
I think we specified for a chair. Man, what the fuck did we say for chairs? Well, we said
couldn't
that everything
come
was
to
a
an
seat.
agreement.
I fucking swear to God, we did.
We couldn't because it all came down to like the leg thing. Because we were like, well, should we say it has 4 legs? Because some chairs don't have any legs.
Right, but those were stumps. We said like that's like a stool.
No, but there's chairs too without any legs. That looks like a chair.
You can sit on anything.
We said the chair was a seat with a back and 4 legs.
No, I think we said legs. I think we said legs. It has legs. I think that's what we agreed on.
Ableist.
Is there an armrest on this chair?
No, I can see that.
Let's not.
I don't want to get back into this.
Can we not? That was so stressful. That was like the most stressful conversation ever.
I can see a back and a leg.
Do you have a link
at least
to the
having to have
post?
a back and a leg. You have to sit on it. It has to have a back. Has to have a leg. Sounds good.
It has to have an
I refuse
armrest.
to discuss chairs again.
Doesn't have to have an armrest.
So
I
false.
really think that we
How
might have
about
been
luxury
discussing the
chairs? Have
definition
you
of
guys?
Well, I mean, luxury chairs.
propaganda too
Yeah, all
long.
kinds of
Actually,
things.
Wait,
Hold on, I'm
hold
typing it
hold
out to see if we can
somebody just said
agree.
something
The
interesting. Who
wording's
was that?
hard. Darwin.
Darwin said it. What did you say?
About what?
Somebody just said something interesting. I don't know who the fuck it was, and I'm mad about it.
I think it was Darwin, because I was talking about chairs.
Darwin, what were you just saying?
No, what I just said was I think we like just spent way too much time on the definition of propaganda, like, and we lost like the original shit that we were talking about.
Oh fuck yeah! This is
I think we made great progress.
We evolve into.
We just did something amazing together. Why you gotta knock it?
I got
were you
more
here-
into
were you
this
here for the gun
discussion,
conversation?
but like the original, it's got absolutely no, this.
Okay, this wording is shoddy, but I typed it up. Tell me if
Okay.
you guys agree with this. I'm gonna you have to read it. Look at the chat, cause me reading it out loud. It's a little shoddy. I can make it better, but I copied and pasted Merriam-Webster and then added our modification.
I don't see anything. Oh, hold on.
I just did it.
Unprovable ideas.
Wait, I'll read it. I'll read it in case anyone's listening, cause
Deliberately.
I'll read it. Let me read it. Propaganda.
Okay.
Phenomenology Club definition. Unprovable ideas, facts, or allegations spread deliberately to further one's cause or to damage an opposing cause, characterized by an exaggeration of authority to make such claims.
Sounds good to me.
I think there's what's the word? Something wrong with this.
Yeah, because wait, what about advertising then? Does advertising fall under this definition? It's not.
Advertising is propaganda.
Problem is
No, it's
plagiarism.
not. It's advertising.
It fits this definition.
You can't just fit anything you want into terms. We have terms specifically because there's meaning. Advertising is not propaganda.
It fits this definition. It fits this definition.
It doesn't. What?
Yes,
Wait, no. Hold on, Bryce.
Yeah,
I think advertising does fit the definition. I don't know if it fits this definition.
You're not even letting me explain why it fits the definition. I'm just.
Well, I want to say something real quick. Literally, the guy, Sigmund Freud's cousin, who was some fucking weirdo.
Exactly.
He was hired by, I think, some
he was
governmental
the godfather
institution.
of PR.
Yeah, he had all of these ways to. He had like theories underlying propaganda. Yeah, I'm not sure, but one of the campaigns he ran was for Lucky Strike cigarettes to get more women to smoke them, and like he did really subtle things that were like psychological tricks basically to like get more women to smoke by like doing this, that, and whatever, like, okay, we're gonna show women like here looking sexy doing this. Like it was like very complicated shit. Like that was done purposefully to manipulate people.
Yeah, that's what advertising
into purchasing.
Especially look at this bit of the definition where it says to further one's cause or to damage an opposing cause. Like if you think of like a really shitty advert where it's just like, oh, this like dishwashing liquid is fucking rubbish, but this dishwashing liquid is blah 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 blah. It's well good, and like, but it's the exaggeration of authority to make such claims is an interesting.
Yeah, does that fit into the advertising?
Because
you can't prove it.
Because here's a guy on the side of a road with a sign saying, lemonade, like this lemonade is good. is that him trying to?
Well, a lot of advertising
is basically like just
category
to sell you shit.
It's just the authority bit that's made that I'm.
Well, a lot of advertising does do things like we hired this scientist to tell you,
Yes,
or they'll get like LeBron James to drink Gatorade, and he's an authority on athletics.
You get people to endorse things, and you get you try to, and you also. And also, you just invent a brand and be like, you can trust us with.
I know.
The fact that this is not going to be shit. This car. Or
maybe certain advertisements are propaganda, like the ones we're speaking about, but maybe not all advertising is propaganda.
I'd say that a sign saying "lemonade this way, $5" isn't propaganda. Maybe.
Right. I'd agree.
It's a bit.
Or just a commercial like this is.
Shit, like
That
You
it's
have to
literally just a
realize that
fact.
they literally use symbolism like to fucking program your subconscious shit, so that when you see that symbol, like you feel a certain way, or they use music to make you feel a certain way about an experience associated
But Darwin,
with the
what about
product
the
and shit.
example he just gave?
Formerly known
No, I've got
as
a great,
words.
I've got a great example that I was going to bring up earlier, but I didn't get the chance to fit it in. But when I learned about, because product placement, right? For ages, I was like, I always made fun of product placement, like assuming that the purpose of product placement is to you see the product and it makes you want the product, like an advert. But what product placement is really trying to do is to create associations with the product and what it's in. So like Snapple in The Sopranos, it's like everyone's drinking Snap. Is it Snapple? Something like that. And they're like, and it's to make you subconsciously think like, people drink Snapple. These kind of people drink Snapple. I drink Snapple. Maybe I should drink Snapple, but it doesn't make like in a way that's like, or it like shows it as like a part of the world in a subconscious way that's like sort of not
we get it.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like it's just its very existence and the fact you see it in a world like is like showing that this is a world where Snapple is what people drink, or like this, or like BMWs are what people drive, and that makes you
all
subconsciously
advertising?
think that, and that makes you
Is all
subconsciously
advertising
think, I need to get a
propaganda?
car. So I would say,
In fact, what's an example of
Darwin.
advertising that is not?
Well,
Okay, I'll
Darwin,
put it
he
this
just
way.
gave an example of a lemonade stand that just says lemonade $5. Do you think that that's propaganda?
Trying to think. Okay, let's look specifically at the definition that we have, and then run the lemonade thing under it.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would say it's not propaganda.
Yeah,
But I think a lot of advertising is
I would
propaganda. I would just say not all of it.
Complex. It's not complex propaganda.
Wait.
It's more just like,
better question.
motherfucker, you see this lemonade, you want the lemonade, go get the lemonade. It's just like really direct, not subtle.
Exactly.
But it's like still.
I think you're right in that. Yeah, not all advertising. Yeah,
something.
It's not all advertising,
like,
but
it's just really it's not subtle.
But propaganda is so.
The real question
isn't a lemonade $5 sign?
Become
Hold on, everyone. Get in, speak.
I said, when does a lemonade stand become propaganda?
When they say best lemonade in town, $5 this way.
Ooh, it's a
Drink
hot
this
day.
lemon.
You know what I'm saying? I got water.
No, I think it'd be if you were like 9 out of 10 kids agree.
Yeah, 9 out of 10 kids agree. Best lemonade in town.
Like just make up some shit. Yeah, I think that would make it propaganda. I don't think the sign itself.
Actually, you don't even really need the science behind it, but just the saying, because all places do this, saying the best thing in town. It's just the fact that it's making it sound like someone who has authority has said that. So it makes it seem like someone's agreed this.
Is that really propaganda?
Wait, Darwin speaking. Darwin.
Okay, let me start just in case people didn't hear me. Okay, have you ever been in like a big place like a college or like just any like sort of big institution or whatever, and you see everybody drinking certain things or everybody eating certain things, like it will not take long for you to start like consuming that shit, like 99% of the time, like just like that's the way that advertising works. Like it's fucking worming its way into your mind, like and convincing you that like this is what you want, like.
But the distinction is that not all of it fits that definition of it being some kind of fucking propaganda. Sometimes advertising is just innocuous. There's nothing to it.
Yeah. just
It's
seeing
just
the
a fucking
product,
sign that says lemonade
just
for
having the
$1,
product
bro.
seen.
That's
No,
not
it's
propaganda.
not. It's not. I'm
advertising.
not saying it's complex or it's insidious or it's like has some sort of evil intention to it, but it does have the intention to it to sway you in a certain way to want something or to consume something. Like,
But we already
Propaganda.
said that that's not enough for it to be
advertising.
propaganda. That's why we went through the whole like defining process. Is that an intent to swing your opinion does not make it propaganda. That would then again make propaganda a useless word because almost anything falls up under that definition. It
But
has
I
to
think
be
Darwin still brought
all
up.
of the other apparatuses.
Yeah. Go on.
But I think Darwin brought up a good point when right after you said, you know, if you say everyone in the town loves this thing, you know, I still agree it's not propaganda just being necessarily oversaturated with a thing. I think that's a propaganda technique, you know. But that would like fit our authority, fit our definition if you lie and say like the whole town agrees, because group consensus establishes authority, you know, for the reasons Darwin was just describing. If you see
Like nobody
everybody
has to say it.
participating in
You
a
see it.
thing,
I don't disagree with that. I'm not saying that no advertising can be propaganda, but what I'm saying is that advertising is not the term advertising is not interchangeable with propaganda.
it's not necessary.
I think it's fair because I was saying earlier all advertising propaganda.
Yeah,
which obviously isn't the same as all propaganda is advertising. But I also now that we've been talking about it, because you know this is what the point of talking about these things are. Yeah, not everything that you could be considered an advert could be considered propaganda. But
just much of it is.
It's just that
so much of it.
Propaganda is just so
a lot of it is, yes.
So suited to fucking selling.
I mean, it's propaganda is just advertising on a different scale.
Yeah,
for different purposes. But I don't think that the two words are like interchangeable. Like I wouldn't say that.
I wouldn't say that they're interchangeable. I wouldn't say.
But they
either.
They
in
just,
fact,
they just might as well have been.
Hold on, let
Darwin
speak.
Let's leave it at that. So we can
He's so quiet. I need to turn him up. Then maybe I won't talk over him.
Yes, I can't.
Sorry,
Darwin, what'd you
sorry,
say?
Darwin.
I didn't hear it.
Great.
Look what you did,
Darwin. My bad. I was just saying, let's leave it at that, and so we can actually continue the conversation.
Oh, I'm going to bed.
Oh my god, I thought we were wrapping up.
Yeah, I thought we wrapped it up.
For me.
But it's interesting because this isn't what we.
This isn't what we
set out to do.
What the hell
but Darwin, I'm interested. Darwin, where
though.
did you think this conversation was going to go?
Huh?
Where did you think this conversation could go next?
We were talking about some shit other
Class
than
analysis.
propaganda before we started.
Oh yeah, we talked about
like there was like an original thing, and then we started talking about.
But didn't we solved that though?
No, we didn't. We just got into propaganda.
No, we just got distracted. This has happened. This has happened both times.
What was our transition?
I have no idea.
Good thing patriarchal society and like mass media communication.
Oh yeah.
Mass media communication.
Representation.
Into representation in the media and then propaganda.
Yeah,
that was the
nexus. Just propaganda.
I enjoyed the propaganda talk though. It was interesting.
Well, I'm gonna go the fuck to sleep. Y'all done kept me up till 11 or 12 o'clock again.
It is
Saturday.
It is 5:30 in the morning at the moment.
Don't matter, bro. Days of the week don't matter here.
It's true. It's true. Even if it was tomorrow, like whatever. I don't know.
Are you uploading this again?
We defined propaganda. Yeah, I think this was a good discussion. We should upload it.
Wait, I got one final question. It's a quick one. You just say yes or no.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Is that your answer?
Yes.
Let me ask it.
He's going to ask if his face is in
What is it?
I don't know why I'm laughing, but
I don't know either, but it's funny.
Do you think it's possible for someone to have such a terrible sleeping schedule that it would at some point in his ancestry down the line in the future be able to evolve that one human to come out every like 56 generations to be capable of never needing sleep again?
No,
Is that
No.
a thing?
no,
No,
You
I
think
think
that's
most of
possible?
evolution came from interbreeding
Absolutely
and mutations. Because we was
I'm
all
saying-
fucking our families and shit, but we don't do that no
Whoa,
more. So I don't think you
whoa,
would evolve at
whoa.
this point.
It's going to take more than 56 generations to fight to move into to become a creature that doesn't need sleep.
Yeah, that's a lot of generations, bro. I think
don't
like
think
4
there are any
generations.
creatures
That's going to have to really
But hear me out.
completely change everything
Hear me out,
about us,
like-
basically.
All you gotta
Go
do
on.
is just like
What you
fuck
gotta
up
do
your
is
brain to the
Doesn't
point where
everything
you
sleep?
you just don't sleep. You just don't sleep.
But everything
Like,
sleeps. We don't even
you
have
have-
a
you-
biological
Does it?
you have to
example of that.
sleep,
Yeah,
but like
not
All
ev-
species sleep.
except for
sleep
microwave.
different- they
It's
sleep
all
different
animals.
but basically everything sleep. Basically,
They
everything.
may
Do
not
earthworms
sleep like
sleep?
we sleep, but like
Earthworms.
they have to rest somehow.
Earthworms do
Can't
have
just
to.
consume
Yeah, it depends what you
maximum
define
energy all the
sleep, because they
time,
do have to.
Hold on,
They
wait,
do
wait,
have to
wait,
stop
wait,
and
somebody's talking.
like recuperate. But like it
Darwin was
could be for
talking.
seconds. It could
Darwin,
be
what did you
literally-
say?
No, I was just saying they may not like sleep like we sleep, but like everything has like elements of like
Rest periods.
yeah, like
Yeah.
lowered activity, like where
Yeah.
they.
But that's not
feel-
sleep.
It's sleeping
I
as
mean,
far
it
as we
is.
understand it. It's just a different kind of sleeping.
But
just-
Gideon asked about sleeping.
Yeah, he asked if how long down. What was his question?
Well, I
how long
implied
down
that
the
by
line that we.
sleeping. What do you mean,
if we-
Gideon? Do you mean like 8 hours?
He means sleeping.
Yes.
yeah,
What?
just
And we're
like
never
you
going to
know,
sleep.
hidden in the hay, bro. Like you know,
I don't think
close your eyes.
it's possible for our bodies to work without sleep. That's why we die if we don't
No,
have sleep.
your body starts to fucking break down.
Our life expectancy
Like,
is very
you
small.
just
Like
wouldn't make
bees
it.
don't sleep.
Yeah. I think
But
the
they only
longest
live for, like,
anyone's
5
gone without
days.
sleeping is like 7 days.
Oh, is that true?
Like,
No, it's much longer than that.
There's like
How
It
much
was-
longer?
it was
how
quite a
much
few.
How much longer?
Your
At
body
least
just
like
cannot
17
regenerate
days.
the way it needs
Yeah,
to.
it was almost
Whoa.
3 weeks. I
17
think.
days
What if-
without sleep.
You just need to sit down.
Who
And,
went
like,
Yeah,
your
but
body
you
just-
start
Who's gone
hallucinating.
17 days without sleep?
I mean, it wasn't fun.
It's been recorded, and people also
That's a
have.
genuine question. I wasn't like. That was
I think that's the record.
go
I'll look it
insane.
up when I'm done smoking. But also, there's people who have really rare,
Stop smoking.
kind of. Shut up. People have really rare kind of disorders where, like, you know, they can't sleep. Like, there's
They
these
do,
weird
Is
things.
that real?
But the thing is, they do. Because I've read about these.
It's
people,
not
so
that they
do-
can't
do-
sleep.
So
They
they
just
can't.
can't
They do.
consciously
They do sleep,
but
but,
they do
it's
fucking
not.
crash
It's not in the way that we. That we sleep. They have little
But
micro
then it's
sleeps.
not what we're calling sleep, which is the
Yeah.
question.
11 days, Butchers. That's the longest anybody's gone without sleep. 264 hours.
Yeah, that makes
That's not.
sense.
It's not clear
That's
how
a
long
lot.
a human could
That's
actually
a lot.
survive without. But at a certain point, he's like, I've gone like 4 or 5 days before, and you start to hallucinate. You're not like really awake anymore.
Yeah, the longest
Is there
I've gone
Your
proof
mental
that you
state's
can
different.
die
The
from
longest
not
I've gone is
sleeping?
5. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can die from not
Who's
sleeping.
died? Who's died from not sleeping?
POWs often. A lot
Yeah,
of POWs have died
exactly.
from that.
Yeah,
Sleep
slave
deprivation.
Ooh,
slave
like your body needs to
laborers
regenerate.
usually.
Like you have
So
to
what
shut down
happens
at
to
some
your
point.
body?
Your
Let's look
body
it up,
just
bro.
fucking
Sleep
it can't-
deprivation deaths.
like
It's,
Your
Yeah, what
processes
exactly
it's like
kills you?
it's like exhaustion.
Stop.
Like your body's just been what?
Actually, Butchers, there's
working.
no
Okay, what if-
record of anyone ever
Oh my god,
dying.
everyone's talking over each other.
There's
Well,
no
listen-
record of a
What?
human ever dying from sleep debt. There's records
Yeah,
of people
'cause-
staying awake for a long time, but no one's ever died from it that I can find.
Shit.
About
Yeah,
it, right?
that's what
Your
I'm
body.
saying. It's like, do you die if you don't sleep, or is it rather that there's never been an example of someone staying awake till they die because they just fall asleep eventually? Like,
They did
can
it
you
with
prove
rats.
that
Yeah,
you can
I mean, that
die
is a
from not
problem.
sleeping?
But your
They did
body.
How
it
did
with
the rats die?
32
How did they
days
die?
of total sleep deprivation. All the rats were dead. Currently, researchers still do not agree on the cause of death. It's possible that the rat's body temperatures dropped so much that they
Yeah.
succumbed to hypothermia
Also, the shit
because they were
that
no longer
that you-
able
that
to.
You ran out of
thermogenesis.
motherfucking life energy. That's what happened.
Yeah.
Also, the shit that you do that you like
What the
do to
fuck?
people to keep them awake is going to be like you could like just pump someone you could just like
Well,
you
it's-
know blast shit at someone.
It's really more. I think that
and like that like they could, and they'll be awake for like 12 days or something. But like
Your body is able to sleep on its
that's
own.
true. It's true.
who the fuck
I
told you
don't-
that?
I've dreamt while I was awake.
Yeah, I mean, I've
Yeah.
been on like 4 or 5 days of sleep debt and had
Welcome to the
hallucinations. But the
Matrix.
issue here is
I've-
that eventually, if you to be forced to remain awake to get to where you're
My 5th day, I had a mental breakdown.
Oh,
I
no,
had
you
anal
definitely wouldn't be
prolapse.
mentally stable.
No, I just passed out. I couldn't stay awake any longer. I had no
Right.
juice left.
I had
But your
anal
body will sooner
prolapse,
knock
and
you
then
the
I
fuck
passed out.
than kill you.
Did you have
Oh.
anal prolapse?
Yeah,
I can't tell
my
what you
ass,
Did this
my
happen?
ass fell out. I took
Oh.
a
Wow.
shit, and
That's right.
Oh, yeah.
my ass came out.
I remember that.
Wow,
See,
that's
that's
Day
why
right.
you
five.
should have went your
Day
ass
5.
to sleep.
My ass was like, "Fuck you, bitch! I'm done. I'm leaving."
Oh my
Out
god.
of here.
Your
Your
ass
body
was
is like it just
tired
starts
before
fucking
you,
breaking down.
Yeah.
I
mean, you
just wonder what the
can't-
actual cause of death is. It's interesting
Well,
that
I
It
think
scientists
makes
don't
sense
agree.
what
I
they say about the thermogenesis makes sense. I mean, if your body stops being able to produce heat, then eventually you would succumb to hypothermia just by fucking core temperature drop because you got no ability to contain your
But
process.
that's because the body isn't getting sleep.
As
But
a
if-
direct result of the lack of sleep, though.
Wait,
The
why?
missing-
Yeah,
Why
that's
does
like
that
body
the
isn't
happen?
sleeping.
I think it's
Why
more
does
like
your body
the lack
not-
of the lack of
'Cause-
sleep weakens you so much that you just do something.
But your body could just rest on its own. It can start vibrating, and you could be like completely
Dude,
aware
what?
of it. You know what I
What
mean?
the fuck are you talking about?
No, like when your legs fall asleep and you like.
That's not the
It
same
is-
thing. They don't actually mean that it's.
Wait, but what
It
about this
sounds so weird.
thermogenesis thing?
I've tried to sleep before, and like I close my eyes, and my body is asleep, but I am fully awake. The only thing
No,
that I
you're
can't
sleeping,
do,
bro.
no. The only thing I can't do is open my eyes.
You're
That's-
misconstruing, I think, consciousness.
What?
You can be conscious.
How do you
and
know?
sleeping.
How do you know your body's asleep? Because you can't move it.
Is
Well,
it
what-
sleep
wait,
paralysis?
what were
Because
you saying?
I'm physically feeling my eyes moving, and I'm trying not to open my eyes, and like I can slowly move my body with just a thought of it. You know, never mind.
How do you move your
I
body?
don't know what
That's
you
just
half
floaty.
asleep.
You're just.
That's just
How do you move
being.
your body to
That's just
rest?
being half asleep.
So my
wait.
I
question
can't explain it, yo, but I'm just
is,
saying.
what does
Like,
heat
maybe
have
it's
to do with?
Fair enough.
Why can you go into hypothermia when you don't sleep? What is
I
that
do believe
about?
I can explain it.
Yeah.
During sleep, I know one thing that I learned. I can't remember fucking where, but you can double check me on this. Your heart rate slows from like your resting heart rate during being awake and alert, being like mine's like 72. When I sleep, my heart rate goes down into the 40s. So we're talking about an incredible reduction in the necessary maintenance of your thermogenesis while you're sleeping. And if you take away the body's rest period where it's allowed to function at a lower rate, you run it out. It's not meant to do that because all of human history has operated on this like circadian rhythm of sleeping and waking and giving your body time to rest and repair itself. That's why most healing happens in sleep too. Because your
Yeah.
body's able to
Yeah.
turn off thermogenesis and
And
focus on
testosterone
other shit.
production.
Right,
And
exactly.
And lots
It
of
gives
things.
you time to rest and repair. It's necessary.
Yeah. I
That's
suppose
interesting. I wonder if you could simulate. I mean, it would take so much technology, but I bet they could keep something alive like for a long period of time, maybe even years without sleeping, but they would have to simulate all of the restorative processes that happen when you're sleeping, you
And
know?
first to understand them.
I bet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see if they could.
Because I don't even know if
Like,
they have a
it's
total
essentially-
understanding.
They
of
fulfill
restorative.
they fulfill everything else
Yeah.
except sleep.
If we
Most of
had a
them
fluid
just
sleep
assume-
science, I think it would be different.
But
But I
that-
don't even
but-
think that we have a clear
Yeah.
understanding of
But then you
what's
might
going on
have
now.
science powerful enough that it like just like that what your body does naturally, like a machine just does for you, and it's almost as if you have slept, but you've just been conscious all
Well,
the time.
but the issue, that's exactly what I'm saying, though, is that we don't even know what is happening in sleep entirely.
yeah,
And until science
exactly.
gets to that point, there's
Yeah.
nothing we could do.
Well, maybe there's a part of sleeping that isn't really sleeping. And before I get into that,
That's what you were just talking about.
kinda. But like, you were saying that 32
Wet
guys
dreams.
died from not sleeping for over, I forget how many days, like 2 months.
32 days, a month.
32 days. Okay.
Where were you a
Well,
month ago? Imagine not sleeping any of the time
no,
you
wait,
slept
okay,
for
but
a
how
month.
Oh
are
my
they
god,
keeping
no
them
sleep
awake?
during
How
all
are,
of quarantine.
how are they keeping them awake? That's the question.
Probably things like
Was
see,
it
here's the
because
thing:
like
is you'd have to read the study because
full,
I don't imagine that they would give them like uppers because uppers are going to
okay,
increase their heart rate. They
exactly.
wouldn't have trouble with thermogenesis.
You see, the flaw in that in general is that like it's not like any of those rats decided like, you know what, I'm not gonna sleep. They were forced to
Wait, can
stay
you
awake.
link that study?
Yeah, hold on.
So
Yeah,
technically,
maybe
that
like
doesn't
distressing
answer my
stimuli.
question. Doesn't
You know,
answer my
you only
question, which
actually
is
have a certain amount of heartbeats, right? Like even if you lived at like a really old
I don't
age, like it's
that.
still a muscle,
Can you
and
show
it
me
like gets
evidence?
tired eventually.
But muscles regenerate.
Yeah, muscles
you can
No, the
always
regenerate
heart,
really
the
replace your
slow,
heart
heart.
bro.
muscle does not
Dick Cheney does it
regenerate.
all the time.
My grandmother's like 99, bro. The bitch ain't never gonna die.
Dick
Yeah,
Cheney
yeah.
has
Just look
That's
it
one of
up.
my
enough
Like
hearts.
beats to live
you
for
didn't
another
have no
200 years.
diseases or anything like that. You only get a certain amount of heartbeats. Just look it up for real.
Yeah, but there's no measurement
Well, I
of
mean,
that, bro.
that's
That's like saying like, of
technically
course, like
true
your
for
heart's only gonna
everyone.
beat a
I'm
certain
not
amount of
saying
time.
like you
Hey,
specifically know, but I'm just saying like the fact that
He's
you would
probably
like
saying that
Everyone.
lose
there's a
out on
maximum
that
that
low heart
nobody
rate
can
period would like
achieve.
But if we
shorten your
don't know
life
it, it's like
significantly.
irrelevant.
Oh, but
But they probably have predicted it with statistical evidence. That's probably what he's saying. There's probably a
How do you
maximum that
measure the
no
heart?
human heart, because they probably measure everybody's like heart.
I've
Average
seen
They
that
heart rate
can
before.
over a
I've
period
seen,
of
scientists
time,
can
and then
tell
apply
you.
it.
I've
that's not the same as there being like a set amount
It's
of
probably a
heartbeats from the
very high
second you're
number
born.
that no one has ever reached.
It was a sleep apparatus, buttress, a disc apparatus.
Oh, shit,
Oh,
okay.
I don't know what that
for what?
means.
what does it look like?
It
All
probably is hooked up
TSD
to your
rats showed a
neurological
debilitated
system.
appearance, lesions on
And
tails
we
and paws,
inserted
and weight loss. In spite of increased
See,
food intake, they were losing weight.
they were forced to stay awake. That's not the same.
Yeah, if you
Well, nobody can. You
well,
would
that's
never. There's never a
but
point I
if
think where you can stay awake long naturally
Yeah, you have to
before your
force
body
yourself to
shut you
stay
down.
yeah,
up.
because
Sleep.
I mean,
your body would just go fuck this and knock
your
itself
body
out.
would, but let's say I was like
I'm gonna send you
able
this
to,
link
I
Yeah,
was able
please.
to,
if you want to
let's
look it
say,
over.
decide, you know what, I don't want to sleep. I want to sit on top of this mountain and just look at the sky for the next 800 hours.
It's
But
You gotta
impossible for
force
you to do it.
yourself
You
to
will
stay
fall
up.
asleep
no, whoa,
eventually.
whoa,
Yeah.
whoa, whoa. Don't make assumptions about my body, sir. Okay? Because,
I've
What's
You
the
would
longest
have to
you've ever
force
I've
stayed?
yourself.
I've made a complete
dude,
assumption about your
What's the
body.
longest you stayed up, Gideon?
I don't know. I've stayed up pretty long.
Do you remember what it
I,
felt like at the end of that pretty long period of time?
well, I was pressured. I was writing an essay and I couldn't finish it, so I
Right.
felt like
You were
shit.
forced to stay up.
Right. You were
Yeah,
forced to stay
exactly.
up
Yeah.
then.
Yeah, but like
No.
Look,
But
I'm
I'm
somebody
talking
who
about
has
in
tried
peak.
to stay
affect
up.
No,
like
I'm
so
talking about the
easily.
longest. But if like the longest I've stayed up was
Yeah, I'm
probably
sure
like
Buttress has had at least a couple attempts at staying up a
7
ridiculously
days
long amount
straight.
of
Well, I
time.
have spent the past few years on average staying up 2 to 3 days and then
I
sleeping for
stayed
like
up
a
3
full day.
days
That
last
was
week.
my schedule. That was my schedule for like the past 4 years, like
So what
2
do you
to
feel
3
like
days
after
That's
3
my
awake.
days?
daily schedule.
Yeah, I
That's
feel
my
like
weekly
You're
shit.
schedule.
not
I
gonna be
That
able
was
agree
to
with
that
you.
was
I
continue one
can't
thing.
force
yeah.
myself
Do
to.
another.
Well, you
That was
have
my
to
week.
actually try hard to not fall asleep.
When I was at
Yeah.
uni, that was my weekly schedule of like stay up for like 3 days, sleep for this day, and then just go through life until you do it again.
I think that this is
Yeah.
kind of like people saying that they want to hold their breath till they die. Your body's just not going to let you stay awake till you die. You would have to be forced by some external entity
But
or
you
some
Yeah.
see,
external
you're
force.
making the
Imagine if they have
assumption that
like
your
the
body and your
the
mind.
Star Trek
Dude, no one's
tech.
ever
Or
died
what?
from sleep depth. No one's ever died from it. If there was
Yeah,
if
you
there was a
can't get
recorded
that
event, we
far.
could talk about it, but it's just never fucking happened.
And it has
What if
never
they had?
happened because of one simple fact, and that's because all human beings, first of all. Second
How
of
do you
all,
die from exhaustion? What kills you?
Lots of
It's usually
things.
some other
Like
effect.
dehydration
the thing about all these
is
things
the
of
most
like dying
common.
A
of
heart
hunger,
attack a lot of times.
yeah,
I
like
think.
dying of
Cardiac
hunger and
arrest
failure.
dehydration and like exhaustion are like that. It's not like a sudden thing. Like it's not a single thing that kills you. It's just that the exhaustion, the
dehydration
starvation, the
They
dehydration.
Cardiac
probably
arrest.
call it
Like,
exhaustion
It's
if it
cardiac
includes
arrest.
a constellation of
yeah,
effects.
your body weakens and weakens seconds until
They'll
your
go
heart gives out, or
They'll go into a
something
cardiac
like that.
arrest.
Run out of
Right.
headache.
I think your heart probably just stops after a
Yeah,
while.
because
Yeah,
your
but
Cardiac
to
body
arrest?
claim a
goes back
sleep
in.
death directly, I think it has to be the
Yeah,
only
but
contributing factor.
I'm
that was what
saying
it
that
was
they
with the
probably
rats.
call
okay,
death by
now-
exhaustion probably has to hit multiple variables. It's not just a heart attack. It's like, okay, you have a heart attack from staying up for this many
Yeah, that's
days,
what I'm saying.
or
That's
you're
what I'm saying.
also, yeah.
Maybe one of the reasons why you can't calculate it is because like your brain is
Yeah.
responsible of regulating a lot of different aspects of your body.
Because if
So-
you were like a
Wait, I'm gonna
Japanese,
cut off
like,
the recording. Everyone say bye to the robot.
Bye, Craig.
See
Bye.
Fuck
ya.
out of here,
That's
Craig.
Fuck out of here,
This
bitch.
is good.
That.